Chapter 631. Lan Shanggu, don't go too far. Lin Zhang's face was full of anger. If anything happens to Lin Guojing, we definitely won't let it go. Lan Shanggu sneered and said, I'm bullying you, so what? Lan Shanggu, look, it's true that people who aren't from the same family don't enter the same door. I was wondering why I felt a little familiar looking at you. When Chen Guojing was scolding me, he was also very arrogant, but I beat him until his face was swollen. He lay on the ground and pretended to be dead. He didn't even move when I kicked his butt. Now you're playing the same trick again. First, you threaten me and act like I'm not afraid of you. Then, you act like you're angry after being slapped in the face. Lan Shanggu looked at Lin Jing unkindly and said, I'm not giving face to your Chen family today. What can you do to me? Lan Shanggu was no longer interested in talking to him. He turned around and walked towards the small courtyard inside the clubhouse. Lin Zhang's face turned green and then white. He stood still for a while before remembering that he had to confirm young Master Chen's safety. He also rushed into the courtyard. Sir, I'm sorry, you can't go in, the man in black stopped him outside. Lan Shanggu, let me in, or I'll call the police, Lin Zheng shouted at Lan Shanggu's back. Lan Shanggu turned around and smiled, no need to trouble you. I'll call the police too, attacking a woman and smashing my private clubhouse. The police will be here soon. Lin Zhang's face turned green. He took out his phone from his pocket and started to make a call. Lan Shanggu walked next to the willow tree and saw that Lu Qi's room was still closed. He said, still not out. No. There's no movement either. No. If we stay here any longer, their children will run out and call us uncle, Lan Shanggu said. Should we prepare the red packets in advance? The willow tree looked at Lan Shanggu and said, you've earned a lot of money by using Lu Qi's name, right? Jealous? Humph. I had no choice. Lan Shanggu said. If I didn't know that young master had such a deep relationship with Lu Qi, I could have pretended not to know anything about this. However, since I already knew that he had a close relationship with Lu Qi, and Mr. Lu Qi happened to be wronged at the Blue Mountain Club in Orchid Valley, I had no choice but to stand up for her. It's rare for Mr. Lu Qi to come to watching. We should ask her to bring back some local specialties. Pointing at the young masters lying on the ground in the courtyard, he said, it just so happens that these idiots jumped out to make trouble, so naturally, their fathers have to make some contributions. The willow tree's face was full of disdain as he said, you just want to make some money after showing off your power. Do you really need to make yourself so great? Lan Shanggu laughed and said, I knew I couldn't hide anything from brother Lu Shu. Why don't we not give this gift to Mr. Lu Qi, and each of us will get half of it? I don't need this. The willow tree refused. It's better if you take it alone. However, you are the one who took the money, so naturally you have to bear the responsibility. What responsibility? Lan Shanggu laughed and said, do you think I'll be greedy for this money? You underestimate my Lan Shanggu. This is a gift I prepared for Mr. Lu Qi. I'm sure Mr. Lu Qi will be satisfied. A small crack appeared on the wooden door. Lan Shanggu and the willow tree thought that Fang Yan and Lu Qi had come out, so they looked up in surprise. The green-clothed boy looked at them angrily and put a finger to his mouth to make a shush gesture. Lan Shanggu and the willow tree were embarrassed. They had never been shushed like this since they were young. Not to mention that they were being shushed by a kid who was so much younger than them. Lan Shanggu was like a child who made a mistake. He nodded his head, indicating that he would be more careful. The willow tree turned his face away, indicating that he had nothing to do with the person who spoke loudly. His voice had always been very low and gentle. Clang! The door was closed again. Our hearts are connected, and we can't control our emotions. Fong Yan, I've been looking for you for 3 years. Luqi's voice was very pleasant, just like the music she played. The content of Luqi's words was very pleasant. Fong Yan didn't expect that Luqi would confess her love to him at their first meeting. Fong Yan, I've been looking for you for 3 years. How much love and affection did she have to say such words to someone? Fong Yan felt very painful. Luqi was a very good and charming woman. She was a woman who could resonate with him. However, he already had Yiro. He could only cruelly refuse her love. This was very cruel to Luqi, and it was also very uncomfortable for him. Fong Yan stood behind the screen and said softly, "We haven't seen each other for 3 years since we parted at the Maple Leaf Club. That time when I first heard Mr. Luqi's heavenly music, I was shocked. I wanted to find a way to meet the music master who could play such a music movement, but something happened, so I put it on hold for 3 years. When I was playing, I felt a little strange, as if I was being watched by a pair of familiar eyes. He understood every note I played and could empathize with the feelings I wanted to express. I was happy, and he was happy. I was sad, and he was even more sad than me. When I played the most exciting part, I could almost see him laughing wildly and wailing. I knew that I met the fated person my master talked about. That was my most hearty performance, and also my most emotional performance. I wanted to know what kind of person could enter my world and enter the world of the 12 barriers of sound I specially set up. After the song, I immediately asked my disciple Wanwan to go outside to find the fated person. Unfortunately, she was misled by the skin and asked the wrong person. I asked him to stand for a while, and he took the initiative to leave. He was also a rare smart person. I asked him to stand for a while, and he took the initiative to leave. This sentence conveyed too much content. In the eyes of Fong Yan, these two were the smartest people in the world. Later, I asked around and found out that an interesting thing happened at the Maple Leaf Club at that time. Fong Yan touched his nose and quickly changed the topic. He said with a smile, "I finally met him today. People who meet each other will meet again. This is God's will." Yes. This is God's will. Fortunately, your performance that day was so obvious, otherwise, how could I find you in the vast sea of people? Why did you find me? To get rid of the knot in my heart. Luqi said. Knot in your heart. Fong Yan was startled. What knot in our heart? Fong Yan, come here, the screen is not for the fated. Luqi's voice came. Fong Yan was excited again. Luqi invited him over. He could finally meet the legendary Luqi. Fong Yan clenched his fists and walked through the screen. As soon as he walked over, he was greeted by a pair of beautiful and deep eyes like the stars in the sky. Her facial features weren't stunning. Her eyes weren't big enough, her nose wasn't straight enough, her lips weren't thin enough, and her chin wasn't sharp enough. However, when these inadequacies were combined together, the beauty they displayed was multiplied exponentially. The longer one looked at her, the more beautiful she became. She was dressed in a classic white robe that dragged on the ground. The hem of the white robe was embroidered with a crane spreading its wings. The crane was vivid and lifelike, as if it could break out of the dress at any time. She held a simple green flute in her hand. The green color of the bamboo itself had not faded, but it was smooth and bright after being caressed. It seemed that Luqi liked this bamboo flute very much. It was said that Luqi liked flowers, all kinds of flowers. Expensive, ordinary, bright, fragmented, and even nameless wildflowers on the mountain paths. As long as the music addict was around, there would be a myriad of fragrances surrounding it and the atmosphere of spring would be overflowing. Fong Yan stared at Luqi with wide eyes and asked, "Who are you?" "I am Luqi, why are you so young?" Fong Yan couldn't help but ask the question in his heart. Luqi had been famous for decades. In his mind, even if she was not a doddering old woman, she was still a very young old woman. It was because of this thought that Fang Yan did not look forward to meeting Luqi. Now it seemed that she was so young, a girl? A woman? This question is very rude. Luqi smiled and said softly. I am sorry. I know it is taboo to ask a woman's age. I am just curious, how do you maintain your beauty? What brand of cosmetics do you usually use? I don't use cosmetics. Luqi smiled and said, I just pay attention to my diet. I eat wild fruits and grains, use flowers to make tea and wine to drink, play the flute and the zither, and read ancient and modern classics. I am not bothered by external affairs, and am not tempted by fame and fortune. Naturally, I can stay young forever. Fang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled, saying, if my two friends outside knew that I came in and talked to Luqi about beauty, they would probably break down. Clothing, food, shelter, and transportation are the foundation of life. Is there anything more precious than these four things? There really isn't. Fang Yan smiled and said. That is why we are talking about the greatest invention of mankind. Right, I have another question to ask you. As the Luqi of Huaxia's 7 addicts, do you usually feel a lot of pressure? Luqi pursed her lips and smiled again, saying, Fang Yan, you are really an interesting person. You used a line from Tang Bo Who Touches the Autumn Fragrance. I have also seen this movie. I like it very much. Chapter 632. Many boys had tried their best to make an appointment with the girl they liked, but always lost the precious opportunity because the topic was inappropriate or because the goddess felt that you were a boring person and had nothing to say to you. If you did not look like Wu Yanzu or your father was not Wang Jianlin, they would not give you a second chance. Therefore, the first impression was very important. Of course, Fang Yan would not make the mistakes of those rookies. As the number 1 Prince Charming of Swallow Dock, he had a lot of experience in picking up girls and being picked up. He knew what the goddesses wanted with just one look. He knew that they were not interested in this topic with just one small movement of the goddess and quickly changed the channel. Fang Yan did not want to talk about music with the music addict because he did not understand and that would expose his ignorance. Fang Yan did not want to talk about martial arts with the music addict because he did not understand and that would expose his ignorance. So, what should people talk about when meeting for the first time? Fang Yan thought about it and decided to use the old way he used to pick up girls. First, praise the other party for being young and beautiful and having good skin. Second, ask about the other party's health and maintenance tips. Whether it was a woman or a goddess, they would find it difficult to refuse others' praise. If you could compliment someone with a sense of hierarchy or freshness, it would be easier to gain points in front of the goddess. In addition, let the goddess take the initiative to talk. After throwing out a topic, quietly wait for her reply. After she had said a lot of things, he threw out a second question from what she had said. Everyone has the desire to show off. Leave the opportunity to show off to the goddess, quietly listen to her talk and give affirmation and approval in time. In this way, the chatterbox between the two was opened, and the relationship between them naturally became closer. Moreover, the goddess felt that you were thoughtful and not boring. The next time she wanted to show off and talk, you would be the first person she thought of. After Fang Yan used this trick, the effect was very obvious. The two people who met each other for the first time happily talked about health and movies. In an instant, they became infinitely closer to each other, as if they were close friends who had known each other for many years. A lot of people like Journey to the West, but I like Tang Bo Who Touches the Fragrance of Autumn more, because I feel that the characters in it are especially lively. Every time I see him draw, I feel especially excited, as if I'm the one waving the brush and splashing the ink. As the head of the 4 great talents in Jiangnan, Tang Bo Who disguised himself as a slave for the girl he liked. When the Hua family was in crisis, he stepped forward bravely and stunned the audience with his spear. He almost catered to all the fantasies of women. He played out the story of Cinderella and the domineering president in the most unconventional way. Moreover, even though he knew that the domineering president already had 7 or 8 wives before him, he did not feel the slightest disgust. Instead, he had infinite sympathy for the domineering president, in the history. Actually, Master Xing has another movie that's not bad. It's called Death Inquisitor. Although it's not as well known as the other movies, the interpretation of the human heart and the changes in the male lead's mental journey are very interesting. The biggest change in his mental journey was God of Cookery. The ups and downs of life are just like that. From health to Stephen Chow, from Stephen Chow to Hua Xiao's movies, from Hua Xiao's movies to the history of international movies, and then to the music in classic movies. Finally, the two reached an agreement. If Fang Yan was the male lead in a movie, Lu Qi would accompany the music in his movie. This was something that Lu Qi had never done before. Her music was independent and pure. She disdained to be associated with anything. It was a well-deserved protagonist. However, she agreed to do such a thing for Fang Yan. It was clear to see how far their relationship had developed. The child in green was holding the teapot and dozing off. When she closed her eyes, her master and Fang Yan were chatting. When she opened her eyes, her master and Fang Yan were still chatting. Fang Yan gulped down the herbal tea in the cup and looked at the music addict with a satisfied expression. He said, "People outside must think that we are talking about the multiple realms of music. At the very least, the topic should be the source of your creation and creative ideas. Are we getting off topic?" Lu Qi shook her head and said, "I'm obsessed with music, but music is not everything in life. A writer's life is not always about writing, and an artist's life is not always about painting. Only by living can I create works that touch people's hearts. I'm just an ordinary person like you. I'll go shopping like an ordinary person, eat at roadside stalls, and buy a pair of jeans that cost 100 yuan. I'll try all kinds of lifestyles. But the essence of doing all of this is still for music." Fang Yan asked with a smile. Lu Qi nodded and said, "If it was before, I would think that I was doing it for a living. But now, I have to confess to everyone, I'm doing it for music. When there's a true intention in your heart, everything becomes utilitarian. It's all right. My greatest ambition is to make a good piece of music. I wish you success." Fang Yan, "What? Maybe I need your help," Lu Qi said with a serious expression. Fang Yan grinned and said, "If it's anything else, I can help." "But you said music, I really can't help you with that. I've never had any musical talent since I was young." Lu Qi's expression was solemn as she said, "No, you can definitely help." Fang Yan saw that Lu Qi didn't seem to be joking and realized the importance of the problem. He looked at Lu Qi and asked, "Are you serious? How can I help you?" "Wait until the opportunity comes," Lu Qi said. "There have been several precedents for this, precedents. My master also met his fated person. So, they created the song Su Wu Shepherds. After my master's master met his fated person, he created the song Bright Moon, which is a masterpiece that can be passed down for generations." "Your master is?" The previous generation's Lu Qi. Fang Yan's eyes widened as he asked, "The title of Lu Qi can be inherited?" The title of Lu Qi has existed for hundreds of years, and every person who has held the title is a member of the music gate. Each generation's Lu Qi will choose an excellent successor and impart all of his knowledge to her so that she can become the best musician and performer. This way, no one in the outside world can compete with her. Furthermore, Lu Qi is extremely strict when it comes to accepting disciples. If her disciple isn't skilled enough, she would rather let the position of Lu Qi remain empty than push her disciple away. Fang Yan pointed at the green-robed boy who was sleeping next to him and asked, "She's the next Lu Qi?" Wan Wan is talented and has a high chance of becoming the next Luchi after me, unless an even more talented person appears in the music gate. This is what it means to be born well rather than learn well. Fong Yen sighed softly. So the title of Luchi has been taken up by people like you. Luchi chuckled and said, that's exactly what it means to promote a virtuous person. Fong Yen thought, Mo Qingdi is one of Hua Xiao's 3 dragons, should I inherit his title as well? Hua Xiao's Azure Dragon Fong Huahua, that sounds quite impressive. I've learned another big secret, Fong Yen said with a smile. However, I also have a little secret to tell you. What is it? I'm afraid someone wants to borrow your tiger skin, Fong Yen said. Is it the Nalon Mountain Valley outside the gate? That's right, Fong Yen smiled and replied. This person's thoughts are complicated and pervasive, I'm sure he won't let a great deity like you go. Luchi nodded and said, he stood up for me, so I owe him a favor, if he wants to borrow it, I'll lend it to him. You're such a kind person. Isn't he your friend? I don't know him very well, I wouldn't do what he did. Fong Yen immediately cut off his relationship with Lan Shanggu. Luchi stood up, walked to Gujing in the corner, and said, I'll use a song called Hero to thank our friends from Flower City for their hospitality. The sound was clear, then became passionate. A hero cherishes a hero, sending him off again and again. The blue-clothed child sent Fong Yen out. Fong Yen smiled and nodded at her. This child will be the future Luchi. This kind of thing, it's definitely done behind the scenes. Lan Shanggu came up and asked, did Miss Luchi invite us in? Fong Yen shook his head. Lan Shanggu's expression was full of regret, saying, I prepared such a generous gift for her, but I don't even have a chance to see her. She said to thank our friends from Flower City for their hospitality, so she gave us a song called Hero. Lan Shanggu laughed and said, so Miss Luchi knows me, she called me Hero. This was a man who was easily satisfied. Bang! A huge figure was thrown into the courtyard. Bang! Another black figure was thrown in. The black-clothed men guarding the arched door couldn't retaliate at all, they were silently thrown out like sandbags. Lan Shanggu's expression was gloomy, saying, the Qin family is too arrogant. While saying so, he strode towards the arched door. Fong Yen and the willow tree looked at each other, then they also followed. A middle-aged man wearing a flowery long gown strode over, casually waving his hand. The black-clothed men who tried to stop him fell to the side. 1 man and 1 horse, it seemed like they couldn't be stopped by 1,000 men. Lan Shanggu raised his sword and stood in front of the flowery-robed man, shouting, who dares to break into my Blue Mountain Club? Get the hell out of here. I'm a love-struck fool, the middle-aged man said with a gentle voice. Lan Shanggu laughed loudly, saying, ha ha ha, I've never seen someone call themselves a love-struck fool. Lan Shanggu's laughter slowly stopped, looking at the middle-aged man in disbelief, asking in a low voice, what did you just say? Who are you? I'm a love-struck fool, the middle-aged man said again. Chapter 633. I'm a flower addict. I'm a flower addict. Hearing someone introduce themselves like that in a public place, would you think that this person had just escaped from the Malin Mountain Mental Hospital? Most people were unwilling to admit that they were a flower addict, unless they were one of the 7 addicts of Huaxia. Obviously, this flashy guy wearing a colorful robe that looked like he was draped with a painting of 100 flowers vying glamour might really be one of the 7 addicts of Huaxia, flower addict Lin Fuyang. Otherwise, which middle-aged man would hold his head up high and shout that he was a love-struck fool over and over again in front of others with his chest out in satisfaction? Naturally, Lan Shanggu also thought of this problem, so his attitude changed from mockery to awe. The 7 addicts of Huaxia had been famous for a long time, and they were outstanding figures in each field. A slight move in one part could affect the whole body. No one knew what kind of connections and forces they had. Moreover, these people came and went without a trace, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. They were not easy to deal with. It was better not to provoke them. Only fools would fight with lunatics. Who would be willing to be such a fool? Is it senior flower addict Lin Fuyang? Lan Shanggu felt that the Lan family was very unlucky tonight. First, Lan Tingwei was beaten up by him, then Lan Shonua was ruthlessly ridiculed by him. Now it was his turn to stand up and accept punishment. Whether it was the music addict or the martial addict, they were both important guests of his Blue Mountain Club. As the owner of this club, he had the responsibility and obligation to treat these two masters. No, a master and a big milk, well. Lan Shanggu regretted in his heart. If he had known earlier, he would not have invited Fang Yan and Lu Shu to his Blue Mountain Club for a small gathering. Not only did he eat and use his own things, but he also had trouble knocking on his door. Of course, Lan Shanggu would never admit that he had taken the initiative to provoke and use others to establish his authority, such an immoral idea. It's me. The flower addict Master Lin was a little impatient. He stared at Lan Shanggu unkindly and said, I say, are you done asking? I'm done. Lan Shanggu opened his mouth and laughed, revealing 2 rows of neat little white teeth. He took the initiative to extend his hand to Lin Fuyang and said, Senior flower addict, your presence brings light to our humble Blue Mountain Club. I'm the owner of the Blue Mountain Club, Lan Golu. I've admired Senior flower addict for a long time. Senior flower addict, I happen to have obtained a bag of good tea from my place. May I have the honor to invite you to my place for a cup of tea? You don't have the honor. Lin Fuyang rejected Lan Shan Valley's invitation without hesitation. He didn't even bother to shake hands with him. Where's Le Qi? I want to see Le Qi, music addict. Lan Shanggu stole a glance at Fang Yan, who was standing at the side. What he meant was, look, someone is here to look for your old lover again. You brought this trouble upon yourself. What music addict? Senior flower addict, I don't understand what you're saying. Music addict, one of the 7 addicts of Hua Xia, the music addict, Shui Yun, who is obsessed with music. I just heard her playing in the distant Green River Valley. It's in this direction. Hurry up and ask Shui Yun to come out and see me. Lan Shanggu said with a sincere smile, Senior flower addict, I've long heard the name of Senior Le Qi, but I've never met her. This sentence was true, because Le Qi didn't even give him a chance to meet her. When saying this, Lan Shanggu glanced at Fang Yan with hidden bitterness. Fang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled, but didn't say anything. Before understanding the intentions of the flower addict, he was more willing to be a bystander. I don't know Mr. Le Qi, so I naturally can't ask her to come out. After a pause, Lan Shanggu continued, besides, even if I know Mr. Le Qi, she's the same as Senior flower addict, an honored guest of my Blue Mountain Club. How can I casually ask her to come out and see others? If Senior flower addict comes to our club and someone wants to see you, I can't easily ask you to come out and see others. Senior flower addict, don't you think so? A person should have a conscience. The flower addict didn't seem to have a good temper. He said angrily, I'm not asking her to come out and see others, I'm asking her to come out and see me. Senior flower addict, you're also a person. I've been friends with the flower addict for many years. It's naturally not a problem for her to see me. The flower addict raised his foot and rushed inside. Lan Shanggu hurriedly blocked his way. Senior flower addict, don't be impulsive, you're making things very difficult for me. Get out of my way. The flower addict Lin Fuyang shouted. The smile on Lan Shanggu's face disappeared, and his expression became gloomy. He said, Senior flower addict, are you preparing to bully a junior? The flower addict didn't take Lan Shanggu seriously at all. He rushed straight to the center of the courtyard, glanced at the surrounding rooms, and shouted loudly, Lu Shui Yun, come out, I heard your flute. An old friend has come from afar, don't you want to see me? No one answered. All the doors of the rooms were tightly shut. There was no movement at all. Lu Shuai-yun, you can't hide. As the flower addict spoke, he used his nose to sniff the air. Then, following the smell in the air, he strode towards the door of a room. Standing at the door, he laughed wildly and said, Lu Shuai-yun, let Wan open the door. Otherwise, I'll have to do something that's not very elegant. I smell flowers, roses, lilies, peonies, cloves, hyacinths, chrysanthemums. These are your old habits. Lu Shuai-yun, quickly open the door. Creak, the wooden door was opened, and a blue-robed child stood at the door, staring at the flower addict Lin Fuyang with a displeased expression. He angrily said, You're so annoying. Master is already asleep, why are you shouting outside? Don't you know that this is very rude? I knew I was right, Lu Shuai-yun really lives here. The flower addict laughed loudly and reached out to touch the child's head, but the child evaded his hand in disgust. Wan, I haven't seen you for a while, you've grown a bit taller, go and wake your master up, tell her that Uncle Lin is here. Okay. I've said it before, Master is already asleep, she's already seen a guest today, so she won't be seeing any other guests. Oh, who is it that can make your master want to see you? The flower addict Lin Fuyang stared fiercely at Lan Shanggu, and said, That boy? This guy was a jealous person, and he regarded Lan Shanggu as his biggest rival in love. Who master wants to see has nothing to do with you. The blue-robed child said, Go back quickly. I'm going to close the door. The blue-robed child finished and was about to close the wooden door with both hands. Pa, the flower addict Lin Fuyang put his hands on the door, not letting the child close it. He angrily shouted at the music addict in the room, Lu Shuai-yun, you're too cruel. We're old friends, and you don't even give us a chance to see each other. Do you really want to be so cruel? Let go of me. The blue-robed child desperately tried to close the wooden door, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't do it. How could he compete with Lin Fuyang, who was tall and strong at such a young age? Lan Shanggu's heart ached when he saw the little girl's small face turn red, and the fine beads of sweat on her forehead. He said, Senior Flower Addict, since Mr. Music Addict is already asleep, why don't you come back tomorrow? After all, it's not polite to disturb a lady's rest in the middle of the night. The flower addict turned around and stared at Lan Shanggu, and said with a displeased expression, You, get out of my way. Lan Shanggu grinned and said, You see, you've insulted me again, I'll remember it all. So what if you remember it? Lin Fuyang's face was full of disdain, and very arrogantly glanced at Lan Shanggu, and said, Are you going to beat me up? Ha ha ha, Lan Shanggu was amused by the flower addict Lin Fuyang's words, and said, You're the flower addict of Huaxia's 7 addicts, how could I beat you up? I have the heart, but I don't have the guts. Lin Fuyang snorted coldly and shouted at Luqi again, Shuai-yun, you know me. If you don't come out, I won't leave tonight. We'll meet again when you come out. If you are willing to stay in this house for 1.5 years, I will stand guard outside this door for half 1.5 years. Puchi, Lan Shanggu couldn't help but laugh out loud. The love-struck fool, Lin Fuyang, was very unhappy. He angrily shouted, Brat, what are you laughing at? I'm laughing at Senior Flower Addict's words. Lan Shanggu laughed so hard that he couldn't breathe. Mr. Luqi has been living in this house for 1.5 years, so of course he has food and drinks. If Senior Flower Addict were to guard this door for 1 year or so, I'm afraid that she would starve into a dried corpse without food and water, right? You bastard! The flower addict was enraged by Lan Guanju's words and shouted, Get lost! This is the 3rd time you've insulted me. I'll remember it. Lan Shanggu looked at the love-struck fool and said. So what? The flower addict didn't see Lan Guanju as an opponent of the same level. She once again shouted at Luqi, "Shueyun, if you don't say anything, you'll what?" Lan Shanggu asked from the side. The flower addict's expression was conflicted. She hesitated for a while and didn't know what to do to express her heartlessness. Commit suicide by cesarean section. Senior flower addict, you mustn't do that. Lan Shanggu tried to comfort her. Even if you want to die for love, please don't do it in my Blue Mountain Club. I can't bear this responsibility. Hearing Lan Shanggu's words, Lin Fuyang finally understood what he had to do. He took off the long robe he was wearing and took out a huge pair of scissors from his waist. Lan Shanggu and Lu Shu quickly dodged. They didn't want to be pierced by this pair of scissors. Fong Yan's eyes slightly shivered. He was already in a defensive position. If he dared to make any reckless moves, Fong Yan would beat him up so badly that even his mother wouldn't be able to recognize him. The flower addict raised the scissors and looked left and right. Those who were stared at by him couldn't help but take a few steps back. No one wanted to be the target of this madman. The flower addict finally chose a target. He waved the scissors and rushed towards the center of the courtyard. Everyone panicked and ran in all directions. Even the young masters who had their legs broken and were pretending to be dead crawled towards the arched door with all their might. "I'll kill you all." The flower addict rushed in front of a cypress pine tree in the center of the courtyard and started to cut it with the scissors. Fong Yan and his companions were all stunned by what they saw. Chapter 634. Broken branches were all over the ground, and needles were flying everywhere. Kacha, kacha, the sound of the tree being cut was endless. The flower addict's posture was wild, and the way he waved the scissors was free and unrestrained. From his appearance, he really did look like an artist. But nothing good came out of Lan Shanggu's mouth. He looked dumbfoundedly at the flower addict Lin Fuyang, who was about to fight with Pine and Cypress, and sighed, "This guy, is he a flower addict or an idiot?" Fong Yan was also speechless. Looking at the way he waved the scissors, he thought this guy was a dick-cutting maniac, cutting off anyone's dick that he didn't like. A group of people dodged here and there, but he just wanted to mess with a pine tree. This made their dodging meaningless. It was too embarrassing to do something meaningless. "Right, I've always had a question." Lan Shanggu turned to look at Fong Yan, and said, "Which idiots are there in Huaxia's 7 addicts? Is there a guy named Idiot?" "I'm also curious," the willow tree said. Fong Yan smiled bitterly, and said, "I've seen Dao addict Song transplanting seedlings, I've seen martial addict Ho Zhendong, I've seen music addict Shueyun, I know there's medicine addict Qin Wujie. I also know there's tea addict Xin Yuanqiu, I know there's painting addict Bai Lu, and this flower addict Lin Fuyang. I've never heard of an idiot. But, I've seen a lot of idiots in real life." Lan Shanggu glanced at the flower addict Lin Fuyang with disdain, and said, "I think this ranking is very inaccurate. If I were to rank Huaxia's 7 addicts, I'd definitely add an idiot. This guy is obviously an idiot, right? Who is he trying to scare by waving the scissors and cutting the tree like crazy? If men are all like him when it comes to picking up girls, I'm afraid those women would rather like their own kind than any other man. Maybe there's a surprise." Fong Yan said with a smile. "What surprise?" Lan Shanggu didn't like flower addict Lin Fuyang, so when he talked about him, he naturally had a mocking tone. "Isn't this a surprise?" Fong Yan stared unblinkingly at the pine tree that Lin Fuyang was crazily pruning. His face was filled with surprise and admiration. "What's so nice about this tree?" Lan Shanggu noticed Fong Yan's strange expression and looked over as well. He didn't find anything special. He took a closer look and realized that something was amiss. When he looked at it for the 3rd time, he finally knew what was wrong. He had actually cut the pine tree into the shape of a human, an outstanding and beautiful woman. There was a faint smile on her face. Her appearance was gentle, but there was an unapproachable arrogance in her bones. It was so clear, as if he could touch it. Logically speaking, floral art and gardening were only similar in form or spirit. It was impossible for you to see specific things like eyes, mouth, eyebrows, and so on. However, you can feel their existence from the works of the anthomaniac. It was no longer a work of art. It was a real person. A person with spirit and flesh. What's going on? Lan Shanggu asked in surprise. Am I the only one who saw a beauty? He cut the tree into a beauty. That's Luqi, Fang Yan said with infinite admiration. He had seen Luqi before and knew how similar the expression and temperament of the person under Flower Addict's hands were. Only when he remembered a person in his heart could he easily show her. He gave her soul, flesh, and everything beautiful in the world. The Luqi under Flower Addict's hands was very similar to a real person, but even more beautiful. For example, Luqi's slightly raised head arrogantly. This kind of thing was hidden deep in his bones. However, he had skillfully dug it out and displayed it incisively and vividly. Flower Addict was indeed a flower addict. I didn't know Mr. Luqi was so beautiful. Lan Shanggu looked at Luqi's appearance obsessively. He couldn't see the real person in real life, so it was good to see it artificially. I thought it was an old man. However, isn't this flower addict a bit too powerful? With just a pair of scissors in his hand, he could turn an ordinary tree into the appearance of the woman he likes. Such a peerless skill of picking up girls is unstoppable. Who can compete with him? There are 4 realms of flower art. The first is form resemblance, which only takes the form. The second is spirit resemblance, which has both form and spirit. The third is ghost acts, which can only be obtained by a great master. The fourth is divine craft, which is rare in the world, like a god descending to earth. I have learned flower art for more than 10 years, but I only reached the level of spirit resemblance. And this is my best performance. Fang Yan said with a sigh. What about him? Lan Shanggu pointed at flower addict Lin Fuyang, who was still doing the last bit of trimming, and said, which realm is flower addict at? Because he had seen flower addict's ability, Lan Shanggu's attitude towards him was much more respectful. He didn't choose any special materials, just a pair of scissors as a tool. He casually trimmed a pine tree in the yard, and the work he produced was already in the ghost axe realm. This is a rare genius in the flower art world. He truly deserves the title of flower addict. Fang Yan pointed at the pine tree in front of flower addict Lin Fuyang, and said, a music addict cut by flower addict. This scene can become the treasure of your Blue Mountain Club, and ensure that your Blue Mountain Club will not decline for 100 years. Lan Shanggu thought about it, and also became happy. That's right, Flower Addict used the pine tree in his Blue Mountain Club to cut a music addict. Then, according to the property law, this music addict naturally belonged to him. If this matter was accidentally spread, wouldn't it attract countless celebrities in watching, and even guests from all over the country to come and watch? At that time, his Blue Mountain Club would be crowded, and because of this music addict, his Blue Mountain Club would complete an upgrade, and become the top club in the world. But soon, Lan Shanggu couldn't be happy anymore. Because he thought of an extremely serious problem. He looked at Fang Yan, and said, the pine tree will grow. Fang Yan nodded, and said, yes. As long as it is still alive, it will continue to grow. If it continues to grow, then this music addict, will it grow to nothing? That's for sure. Fang Yan nodded. The respectability of gardening also lies in its changes. As long as it is a living gardening, it will change according to the 4 seasons, so it's normal for the music addict to disappear. But don't worry, even if the music addict is gone, the story of the flower addict and the music addict will still exist. 30 years later, as long as a guest comes over, you can point at the towering pine tree and say that the flower addict used this pine tree to cut out a music addict, and everyone will still be very grateful. Lan Shanggu shook his head and said, "That's too much. If we can't see that it's a music addict, who would be willing to admit that it's a music addict? There's another way. What is it?" Fang Yan pointed at the flower addict and said, "Think of a way to make him stay, and let him trim you every day." "That's a good idea," Lan Shanggu said happily. The flower addict waved the scissors to cut off some minor details, and then stood in front of the music addict with a sad face. "Shui Yun, are you really this cruel? You rejected me again and again, and now you won't even give me a chance to meet." He reached out his hand and gently touched the face of the music addict, and said with a sad voice, "Tell me, what do you dislike about me?" I'll change, okay. You are a burning flame, so I'm willing to be a moth flying into the flame. Even if I'm smashed to pieces, even if I'm beyond redemption, even if I'm burned to ashes, I won't give up the chance to hold your hand in this life. Why is love so hurtful, so heartbreaking? This time, not only Fang Yan couldn't help but laugh, but even the willow tree's mask made a strange sound. Who is it? Which bastard is laughing? The flower addict was so angry that he roared at Fang Yan and Lan Shanggu. This time, Lan Shanggu was able to hold back his laughter. He stared at Fang Yan and the willow tree with righteous indignation, as if he was ashamed to be associated with them, and said, "Senior flower addict is deeply in love with senior music addict. Even a stone-hearted person would be moved by this scene. I just don't understand. At such a sad moment, how can you still laugh?" Lan Shanggu strode towards the flower addict Lin Fuyang, reached out his hand and patted his shoulder, and said, "Senior flower addict, don't be sad. I believe that sincerity can move metal and stone. As long as senior flower addict continues to persevere, you will definitely be able to move Mr. Music Addict's heart, and he will be willing to hold hands with you until old age, and become a legend in the world. Aren't the flower addict and music addict meant to be a match made in heaven?" After saying this, he glanced at Fang Yan guiltily. He didn't know what the relationship between them was. Would he be angry at what he said? The flower addict Lin Fuyang nodded repeatedly, and said, Yes. I am the flower addict, she is the music addict. She likes flowers, I also like flowers, we should be a good couple. You just said that you are willing to guard the door of this room. Whenever Mr. Music Addict comes out, then you will meet again. If she is willing to stay in this room for 1.5 years, you will guard the door for half a year. The flower addict looked at Lan Shanggu with a face full of confusion and said, "Did I say that? Why are you asking this? What do you want? Do you want to laugh at me again?" No. I definitely didn't mean that. Lan Shanggu waved his hand repeatedly. I just realized that I have made a huge mistake. I shouldn't belittle other people's love. All the infatuated people in the world deserve our respect. Senior flower addict, you can just stay here peacefully. I will reserve a room for you next to Mr. Music Addict. You will live next to each other. Maybe you will see each other every day. Really? The flower addict was overjoyed. That's really great. Lan Shanggu enthusiastically pointed at the flowers and grass in his yard and said, "The flowers, grass, trees, and stones in this yard are all yours, Mr. Flower Addict. You can cut whatever you want and carve whatever you want. If it's not enough, I'll bring more from outside." Chapter 635. The flower addict was overjoyed. She excitedly pulled Lan Good's hand and thanked him. Fang Yan sighed silently. Lan Good must have a bad conscience to lie to such an idiot. While the flower addict was holding Lan Gudu's hand and expressing her gratitude, and Lan Gudu kept describing to her the happy life of living with Luchi in the Blue Mountain Club, the wooden door of Luchi's private room was finally pushed open. The green-robed boy stood at the door and looked at Fang Yan and the others in the courtyard with an unfriendly expression. Just as everyone was wondering who Mr. Luchi was going to invite in, they saw Luchi, dressed in white, walk out gracefully through the boy's white robe. She stood under the eaves of the courtyard's veranda and looked at everyone in the courtyard with a smile. Everyone who looked into her eyes felt that she was looking at them, and then their expressions became excited. Look, she's Luchi. Oh my god, she's one of Hua Xiao's 7 addicts. So beautiful. Luchi, I actually saw Luchi. Oh my god, today's beating was worth it. The person she admired appeared, and the flower addict looked at her with a face full of surprise. She wanted to say something, but her mouth moved, but she couldn't say a word. There were thousands of words that she couldn't express in her stupidity. It was Luchi who took the initiative to speak. She looked at the Luchi tree that just appeared in the courtyard and said to Luchi with a smile, Fuyang's skills are getting better and better. Just now, I heard you play a flute song from afar. It was so moving that it could linger for 3 months. The flower addict finally regained a bit of rationality, or at least some ability to speak. She looked at Luchi with a fanatical gaze and said, Liu Yun's skills are also getting better and better. Just now, I heard you playing a flute song from afar. It was so moving that it could linger for 3 months. Luchi nodded and said, I came to Huaqing to visit an old friend, and also to meet a friend of 3 years. I'm going back to the capital tomorrow. I didn't expect Fuyang to come over because of a song. There are so many guests today, Liu Yun is overwhelmed by the favor. The flower addict Lin Fuyang smiled and said, to be able to listen to Liu Yun's song, even if I had to fly across the ocean to see you, it wouldn't be a problem. Fang Yan just thought that the flower addict, Lin Fuyang, was a bumpkin who had never seen the world, but now he had to admit that Lin Fuyang's poetry attainments were excellent. He spoke like he was writing poetry, and he could skillfully put some popular song titles into the content of his speech, and it had an excellent effect of confession. Just based on this move, Fang Yan had a whole new level of respect for him. Thank you, Fuyang, for your kindness. Lu Shuai-yun said with a smile, it's fate that we meet. I don't have any good tea here, so I'll go back and play a song for everyone here. We'll meet again if we're fated. Shuai-yun bowed slightly to the people in the courtyard, then turned around and walked towards the box. Oh my god, the music addict is going to give us a song. Luchi is beautiful and kind, I like her so much. Luchi, I like you. Luchi, you are my idol. Those who were beaten black and blue still didn't forget to chase after their idol. Their survival ability was even more tenacious than cockroaches. The green-robed boy snorted coldly and followed his master back to the room. Bang! The door of the box was slammed shut by the little boy. After a while, the moving sound of a flute came from the box. This is a song for me. The flower addict muttered to himself. Lan Shanggu nodded in agreement and said, this song is very beautiful, what's its name? Falling flowers and flowing water. The flower addict said. Lan Shanggu suddenly felt that the flower addict was very pitiful. Very, very pitiful. Thus, Lan Shanggu decided to comfort him. He patted his shoulder and said, Senior flower addict, you can stay in my small courtyard. I don't have anything else here, but I have enough flowers and plants. Standing at the entrance of the Blue Mountain Club, Chen Shuai's expression was extremely ugly. Lin Zheng respectfully stood next to him and said in a low voice, Boss, this Lan Shanggu is arrogant and domineering. He doesn't give our Tiandu real estate any face. I told him the boss's name, and he still doesn't want to let him go. I've negotiated with them for a long time, but I still can't confirm whether the young master is safe or not. Their people are guarding the entrance of the courtyard. I tried many times but couldn't break in. Boss, I didn't do my job well and failed to live up to your trust. Chen Shuai patted Lin Zheng's shoulder and said, Old Lin, it's not your fault. Some youngsters these days, they haven't suffered any hardships, haven't encountered any hardships, so they have arrogance in their bones and don't care about anyone. This is understandable. They said that the music addict is in the club, using the name of the music addict to extort money from everyone. Should we call the police? If the police come, we won't be able to punish the real villains. Chen Shuai said, settle privately and pay us tens of thousands of dollars. Is this the end of it? Boss is right. Chen Shuai waved his hand and a bald man ran over and said, Boss, I'll go and smash his stupid club. Chen Shuai nodded and said, Dahai, go and smash the club for me. Let them pay the price. Let Lan Shanggu come out and talk to me. His club is expensive, I won't go in. Boss, don't worry. I'll twist Lan Shanggu's head off and kick it like a ball. Dahai agreed and led a group of men in black toward Lan Shanggu Club. Chen Shuai sat in his Bentley and leisurely lit a cigarette. Lin Zheng also sat in and comforted him, Boss, don't worry, there will be results soon. Dahai is very organized. There's no rush, Chen Shuai said, it's Lan Shanggu who is in a rush. Of course, Lin Zheng said with a smile. Boss, you're worth two. When that happens, it won't be easy for them to send young master back. They have to apologize and compensate. They have to give us a reason. If the reason isn't good, we won't accept it. That's true, Chen Shuai said with a smile. It's easy to invite a god in but hard to send him away. Young people will never learn to be obedient if they don't suffer a little. I'll be Lan Shanggu's mentor for once. Knock, 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 someone knocked on the car window. Chen Shuai was furious. There were bodyguards outside, how could they let someone knock on the car window? Where did they go to eat **tea? Knock, 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 this time, it wasn't knocking, it was slapping. Lin Zheng looked out the window and said, Boss, it's Lan Shanggu. That brat from Lan Shanggu is here. It was indeed Lan Shanggu standing outside. Of course, there was also Chen Shuai's bodyguard, Baldy Dahai. Baldy Dahai was being held up by two men in black. His bald head was no longer intact, it was stained with red blood. His face was a mess of flesh and blood. Who knew how many punches and kicks he took? Lin Zheng opened the car door and got out, then stood guard by the door. Chen Shuai then got out of the Bentley. He glanced at Baldy Dahai and sighed that he wasn't careful enough and fell for this brat's trick. Looking at the two bodyguards lying on the ground, he cursed them for being idiots. They kept bragging about being the top fighter of the international mercenary group, the best soldier in the world, but in less than 3 minutes, they were beaten up and dragged back. Lan Shanggu laughed as he looked at Chen Shuai and said, Boss Chen, these are your people, right? Chen Shuai stared at Lan Shanggu and said, That's right. As long as they're not, Lan Shanggu laughed and said, I'll bring them to you. Lan Shanggu waved his hand and said, Hand them over to Boss Chen. And so, the men in black let go at the same time. The bodyguards that went in with Baldy Dahai immediately went limp and fell to the ground. This kind of behavior was undoubtedly a ruthless slap on Chen Shuai's face. He felt his face burning with pain. Boss Chen, I've brought them to you. You have a lot of work to do, I won't disturb your work anymore, Lan Shanggu laughed and said. Goodbye. Saying that, he turned around and walked towards the Blue Mountain Club. Lan Shanggu, Chen Shuai shouted. Lan Shanggu turned around, smiled and asked, Boss Chen, is there anything else? You imprisoned my son, Chen Guijing, beat up my bodyguards, and you're leaving just like that? Chen Shuai coldly asked. Oh. So Chen Guijing is Boss Chen's son. I just found out, Lan Shanggu laughed and said. Boss Chen, you came at the right time. I have something to discuss with you. Today, my Blue Mountain Club had a guest. Your son, Chen Guijing, ran over and insulted and kicked the door. My guest was very angry, and I lost face as well. Originally, I was going to call the police and send those hooligans to the police station for a few days. But a bunch of uncles kept apologizing to me and said that it wouldn't happen again. I had to give them face. What did Boss Chen say? Isn't the guest you're talking about Lu Qi? Others might be afraid of the man behind Lu Qi, but I, Chen Shuer, really don't care about her. My son bullied her, so what? Lan Shanggu, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't go overboard. If you go too far, don't blame us for disregarding our image and taking action against you. A junior, Grandpa Lan is a smart man. Why don't you give him a call and ask for his opinion? I'm also the man behind Lu Qi, one of them. Fang Yen smiled as he walked out from the shadows and said, I don't feel comfortable hearing someone bully my woman. Chen Shuer, others might be afraid of the power of the Chen family in Tiandu, but I, Fang Yen, really don't care about you. I bullied you today, so what? Chapter 636. Chen Shuer had many investment projects in Huaqing, so he spent a lot of time in Huaqing. However, overnight, he realized that he didn't understand the young people in Huaqing anymore. The once glorious four beauties of Huaqing were either disfigured or sent to prison. They had long become a topic of conversation and a joke in the eyes of countless people. Lan Gu broke both his arms and left the Lan family, becoming rootless duckweed. Because of this, when Chen Shuer heard that his son, Chen Guijing, had a conflict with Lan Gu, he only sent a lawyer over to deal with it. He thought that as long as the lawyer mentioned the name of the Qin family in Tiandu, Lan Gu's only choice would be to lower their heads and admit their mistake. They would then respectfully send Chen Guijing out. He would be magnanimous and punish them a little. What else could he do to them? No matter how useless Lan Gu was, he was still a descendant of the Lan family. He couldn't offend the Lan family too much, right? Chen Shuer was attending a small private gathering when he received a call from the lawyer, Lin Zhang. Lin Zhang was in a bad mood. He said that Lan Gu's attitude was bad and they weren't willing to let him go. Chen Shuer thought about it and decided to make a trip himself. No matter how busy his business was or how important his connections were, he had to be extra careful when it came to his son. He had already thought about it on the way here. First, he would let Baldy Big C and his men destroy the Blue Mountain Club from the inside out. Then, he would let Lan Shanggu come over to apologize personally. That was exactly what he did. But wasn't the ending a little too quick? Chen Shuer knew of Fang Yen. Anyone who had reached a certain level would know of his existence. Even if they didn't like him, who could easily ignore him? He was the major shareholder of Chaoyan Technology. He was on good terms with Lan Gu's Lu Shu. He was sworn brothers with Du Qing of Qingyun Group. Such a person was still very powerful in Huaqing. However, he had offended some big shots in Yanjing and was being suppressed everywhere. His life wasn't good. Now that Fang Yen had stepped forward and acted as if he was going to bully Chen Shuer on behalf of Lu Qi, Chen Shuer's anger soared. For decades, no one had ever dared to point at Chen Shuer's nose and say, "So what if I want to bully you?" Fang Yen. Chen Shuer's voice was low. He was trying hard to suppress the anger that was about to erupt. "Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? How dare you little brats talk to me like this?" Fang Yen squinted his eyes and smiled. He pointed at Langu Valley and said to Chen Shuer, "This guy has been discriminated against for a long time. Tonight, he suddenly wanted to find someone to show off his power. After thinking about it, he thought of your son. So, he picked up a wooden stick and gave it a good beating. Your son is now lying on the grass in the yard, pretending to be dead. Even if someone stepped on his face, he wouldn't dare to move. Fong Yen, don't go too far, how could that be? Fong Yen said with a smile. You, the bald bodyguard, wanted to smash the club, but before he could do anything, he was beaten to death by the hidden troops in the Orchid Valley. How bad can he be? He planned it and was waiting for you to come. Just now, I tried to persuade him, saying that Mr. Chin is a guest from afar, and that he should just ask a few of his brothers to send his people over. But he refused, insisting that he wanted to see Mr. Chen's funny expression at this time. I think he's being too unreasonable. So, I followed him to see. Fong Yen, Chen Shui roared in anger. Since you've done this, prepare to wait for my revenge. Fong Yen waved his hand and said, if I were you, I would go back and watch my stock price. What do you mean? When Nasdaq opens, Chaoyan Technology will buy Tiandu real estate stock price. It may also be a malicious suppression. Fong Yen looked at Qin Shuai with a smile and said, you should know something about Chaoyan Technology, right? We have plenty of money anyway. You guys, Qin Shuai's eyes were red, and his face turned purple. His hands trembled, and he stammered, unable to utter a complete sentence. Fong Yen stared at Qin Shuai and said, Mr. Qin, do you understand what we mean now? What do you guys want? Lin Jing finally reacted. This was a big conspiracy, a big conspiracy. These bastards, they set up trap after trap, and only now did they reveal their fierce fangs. They wanted to suck blood. They used Chen Guojing as a bait to lure out Qin Shuai, the big shot behind the scenes. What did they want? Don't even think about touching Longtu. Fong Yen said coldly. Longtu belongs to Lu Chaoga. No one can take it away. How do you know? Qin Shuai stared at Fong Yen in horror and asked. It's not convenient for the Rin family to make a move, so they asked the Qin family, who have been on good terms with them for generations. You and your father have been so happy in watching recently, hiring a lawyer to help Jiang Zhulu reverse the verdict, and frequently meeting with Jiang Zhulio's mother, Rin Jin. If you say your goal isn't for Longtu Group, at least I won't believe it. What? Even Grandpa Ren, who called his son-in-law a scalper and a dog, can't sit still. Seeing such a big piece of fat meat, even if it's the property of his daughter and grandson, he won't hesitate to snatch it. But he's worried about his face, so he threw you, Qin Shuai, out as a cover. Am I right? Yup, Qin Shuai pointed at Fong Yen and couldn't say anything for a long time. This handsome young man was even scarier than they had imagined. Lan Shanggu looked at Qin Shuai with a smile and said, fortunately, Tinghua praised Qin Guojing in front of me a few times, saying that he's a good friend, so I was curious to find out about his background. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been easy to find out if you had done it so covertly. Qin Shuai left. He came valiantly and energetically, but when he left, it was as if someone had splashed a bowl of rancid soup on his face. That feeling was really King refreshing. He had the urge to beat his bastard son to death. He told him to stay in Mingzhu, but he insisted on coming to Huaqing to show off. In the end, he was betrayed by his own friend. He, Qin Shuai, had been smart his whole life. How did he have such a bastard son? The Bentley drove away. Fong Yen and Lan Shanggu stood in the night breeze. Fong Yen looked at Lan Shanggu with a smile and said, your last stab was really vicious. Lan Shanggu didn't respond to Fong Yan's question, but said with a smile, is Chaoyan Technology really going to buy Tiandu real estate? If you guys do it, I'll also follow suit. Let Willow start too. You eat the meat, and we'll drink the soup. Fong Yen shook his head with a smile and said, I'm just scaring him. Chaoga has a new plan, and Chaoyan Technology has no plans to enter the real estate field for the time being. What plan? Give us a hint in advance. Fong Yen shook his head with a smile and said, "You guys should ask her directly." Lan Shanggu smiled bitterly and said, "To be honest, Lan Shanggu, have never been a timid person, but once I saw Miss Liu, I became a sick cat, then don't blame me." Fong Yen said with a smile. "I've finished the tea, I'll go back first." "You're leaving just like that? You're not going to say hello to Mr. Luchi? Do you think she needs someone to say hello to her? Then what about the local specialties of watching that I prepared for her? Give it to her yourself. What if she doesn't accept it? Can I say it's from you?" "Whatever." Fong Yen waved his hand and walked straight to his car. When Fong Yen returned to the security office of Rosefinch Secondary, Baldy and his friends expressed a momentary shock and a long-lasting fake surprise. Baldy acted as if he had met an old flame that he hadn't seen for many years. He grabbed Fong Yan's arm and said, "Mr. Fong, you haven't come to school for a while. I've been worried about your safety and called you several times, but I couldn't get through to your phone. I went to the dean's office to ask about your situation, and he said that you asked for a leave of absence. I've been waiting for you day and night, and finally you're back." "Yes, you're finally back, Mr. Fong. The next time you go out, you must let us know, so that we won't worry," the other two chimed in as well. It was as if they had lost all interest in life when Fong Yen wasn't around. Only God knew how happy they were. Fong Yen shook off Baldy's excessive affection and asked, "Is there anything going on at school recently?" Baldy cleared his throat and said, "Wang Chang, report the work." "Yes, Director." Wang Chang immediately flipped open the small notebook he carried with him, straightened his back, and read in front of Fong Yen, "On the morning of November 11th, 9 students were late. Their names are Wang Halai, Wan Mingming, Li Xiaola." All right. Fong Yen waved his hand. "No need to read. I'm just asking if there's anything big happening at school recently." "Yes. Our school is going to build a new campus in Shenzhen City." "Is that a big deal?" Fong Yen nodded and said, "I already know about this." "What else is there?" "The news just leaked today, and you already know about it." Baldy asked in surprise. Then he felt relieved and said, "That's right, you have Principal Liu." Fong Yen really wanted to beat him up. Knock, knock, knock. Someone gently knocked on the window of the security booth. Fong Yen turned around and saw Su Qi, who he hadn't seen for a while, standing outside the window and looking at Fong Yen with a smile. "Mr. Fong, long time no see." Su Qi smiled and greeted Fong Yen. Fong Yen nodded and said, "Su Qi, long time no see." "It really has been a long time." Su Qi looked at Fong Yen thoughtfully and said, "I was worried that I wouldn't be able to see you today. It wasn't easy to meet you, so I can't let this opportunity slip by." "Mr. Fong, do you have time tomorrow night?" "What's the matter?" Fong Yen asked. "Tomorrow is my birthday, and I want to invite you to my birthday party. Can Mr. Fong do me the honor of attending?" Chapter 637. 3 years ago, when Fong Yen was still the language teacher and homeroom teacher of Class 9, there were often students who invited Fong Yen to birthday parties. Fong Yen rejected most of them, but when he couldn't refuse, he would go and give them a small gift. Life was simple and happy at that time, and his mood was relaxed. Fong Yen was still a child who hadn't grown up yet, and there were countless people who loved and spoiled him. 3 years later, things were different. He was no longer a teacher at Rosefinch Secondary, but he became a security guard at Rosefinch Secondary to protect the safety of the students. He didn't have the mood to be a teacher anymore. He was worried that the hostility in his heart would be released and lead the students who were crazily absorbing knowledge and nutrition. He didn't expect that there would still be girls who invited him to a birthday party. Inviting a security guard. Wasn't this clearly asking him to go to those luxurious and magnificent places to show off? Fong Yan's first reaction was to refuse. He had too many things to do. Was it necessary for him to go to a student's birthday party? Moreover, it was a female student who was obviously very interested in him. Please, Rosefinch Secondary forbade relationships between teachers and students. Fong Yan wasn't that kind of person at all. Fong Yan raised his eyebrows slightly. When he was about to refuse, Su Chi spoke first. She was still smiling as she looked at Fong Yan sincerely and said, "Mr. Fong, if you could come, it would be the best birthday present I've received." This sentence was too destructive. It immediately blocked the words that Fong Yan was about to say. Your coming is the best present she's received. Can you bear not to give someone a present on their birthday? Can you bear to ruin someone's happy mood? I'm free tomorrow too. Baldy touched his bald head and said with a smile, Su Chi, can I have the honor to go to your birthday party? Of course. Su Chi nodded. She even invited the other two security guards and said, you guys can go together. Let me introduce some friends to you. There's good wine to drink and cakes to eat. Wow, can we go to your birthday party too? That's great. Tomorrow, I'm going to wear the new suit I bought during the new year. Fong Yan hadn't agreed yet, but the other three had already accepted. Su Chi looked at Fong Yan with bright eyes, quietly waiting for Fong Yan's answer in anticipation. Fong Yan looked at Su Chi and said with a chuckle, Happy birthday, Su Chi. However, I already have other arrangements tomorrow, so I might not be able to make it. The smile on Su Chi's face disappeared and she said with some regret, it's really disappointing. Mr. Fong, though you have already refused me, I still hope that you will go, because there is someone who wishes to see you. Who? Fong Yan asked curiously. I should have told you. Su Chi smiled slyly and said, but you rejected me just now, which made me very sad. So, I'm not going to tell you. You'll know when you see for yourself. In other words, if you don't go tomorrow, you'll never know who the person who wishes to see you is. Everyone is curious. You must be very curious right now, right? Fong Yan looked at Su Chi helplessly and said, if I really don't go, won't you ruin someone else's business? I don't care. Su Chi said matter-of-factly. I'm injured, can't I throw a tantrum? That's for women. She took out a few invitations from her bag and placed them on the only wooden table in the security booth. She said, there's an address on the invitations. I'm looking forward to your coming. After that, the girl skipped away. Baldy looked at Fong Yan with a sad face and said, Mr. Fong, Su Chi has good intentions. Why didn't you agree? Fong Yan looked at Baldy with a smile and said, what? She bought you over just because she invited you to a concert. Hey, am I that kind of person? Baldy said with a wave of his hand. He then asked Fong Yan in a low voice, when will Arasima come to watching to hold a concert again? I don't know about that, Fong Yan said. I haven't contacted them for a long time. Fong Yan hadn't contacted the two girls, Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, recently. First, he was injured and recuperating on the mountain. At that time, he didn't even know where he lost his phone. Later, after getting someone to get a new SIM card, he didn't reply in time when he received inquiries from them. With the promotion of Summer's resources, the two girls became more and more popular and were liked by more and more people. Every time Fong Yan opened the newspaper, he could see all kinds of information about them. They said that Jiang Qin was in a relationship with a male celebrity, that Yuan Lin and Jiang Qin were lesbians, that Jiang Qin was going to enter the film industry again, and that Arasima was going to disband. All kinds of rumors made people dizzy. Fong Yan laughed at such rumors. He knew that Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin had a very good relationship. They were good in the past, and they would be good in the future. Moreover, even if they had a conflict, Summer would solve it well. She was a smart woman. Baldy's face was full of regret. He said, I really want to have a chance to go to their concert again. Mr. Fong, can you get me an autograph from Arasima? Fong Yan looked at him helplessly and said, can't you have something else to pursue in life? Then come with us to Su Chi's birthday party. The girl specially came to invite you. Yes, Mr. Fong, during the days when you were not at school, every time she came to school and passed by our security booth, she would ask if you came, rain or shine. How many days has she persisted? I was touched by her. Fong Yan sighed softly and said, if that's the case, I can't go. It's better to avoid trouble. After school in the afternoon, Fong Yan didn't rush back to Lu Chaoga's villa, but walked to the area inside the school. When Fong Yan walked to the entrance of the small courtyard, he saw Qi Ning and a few men in black from the Wind Group sitting in the RV at the entrance, playing poker. Qi Ning's face was pasted with a lot of notes. It seemed that his luck was not very good today. Fong Yan stood at the door of the RV and asked with a smile, why don't you go in and sit? I don't dare to go in. Qi Ning shook his head. Why? Fong Yan asked curiously. Qi Ning tore off the notes on his face, looked at Fong Yan and said, when you were not in watching, we often accompanied Miss Lu here. The first time we came, we didn't know that your grandfather was watching's famous academic Prime Minister Lu Gong. When I saw this old man, I felt my whole body tremble and every part of me felt uncomfortable. After I found out his identity, I didn't dare to step into his small courtyard anymore. Me too. Maybe it's because I didn't study well when I was young. When your grandfather glanced at me, my whole body would tremble, as if I had done something wrong. It's better not to let us go in and suffer. We'd rather play poker in the RV comfortably. Fong Yan patted the car door and said, all right, I'll bring you some food later. No need. We brought our own food. Qi Ning refused. Fong Yan shook his head and said, how can that be? When you come to my grandparents' house, you're my guests. How can you let your guests eat canned food and beef jerky? Qi Ning laughed and said, all right, if there's any extra, you can bring us a plate. We can also improve our lives. No problem. Fong Yan chatted with the young people for a while before stepping into the courtyard. Lu Gong was watching the afternoon news in the living room. When he saw Fong Yan come in, he only snorted coldly. He didn't even look at him. Fong Yan smiled awkwardly and said, Grandpa, are you watching the news? Lu Gong's face was gloomy and he didn't respond to Fong Yan. Fong Yan's grandmother heard the noise and walked out of the kitchen. She grabbed Fong Yan's arm and said, Fong Yan, you've been back in watching for so long, and you didn't come to see your grandparents. Grandma missed you so much. Good boy, let Grandma see if you've lost weight. You look good, which proves that Zhaoga has taken good care of you. Grandma, I'm sorry. Fong Yan said these words with difficulty. Facing his closest family, he had 1,000 words in his heart, but he didn't know how to express them. Silly boy, what have you done to me? Grandma held Fong Yan's hand tightly and said, I know you're in a bad mood, so I didn't call you. Let bygones be bygones. You have to be good in the future. As she spoke, Grandma's eyes turned red and she said, you're the only one your mom can rely on. You have to be careful. Lu Gong was infuriated. He slapped the table and shouted, what are you crying for? Isn't he still alive and well? Grandma was also angry and said, you old man, when Fong Yan didn't come, you sighed every day and hinted to me to call him and ask him to come over for dinner. Now that Fong Yan is here, you put on a sour face and don't say anything. What do you mean? Why are you slapping the table? If you can, why don't you smash the table? You, what about me? Stupid woman. Stupid as hell. Oh, you're saying I'm stupid now that you're old. You call me a stupid woman. Go find someone smarter. Lu Chaoge appeared at the kitchen door and said anxiously, Grandma, the chicken wings are burning. Oh, I'm still cooking in the pot. Fong Yen, take a seat first. Ignore that old man. As he spoke, he jogged into the kitchen. Lu Chaoge gave Fong Yen a look, telling him that the situation was dangerous and that he should be careful. Lu Gong gave Fong Yen a sharp look and said, Come upstairs with me. Fong Yen felt a headache coming on. As soon as he entered his grandfather's study, he would inevitably be reprimanded and lectured. Chapter 638. Lu Gong entered the study, walked straight to his big mahogany chair and sat down. The sofa in Lu Gong's house was made of wood, the chair was made of wood, and most of the furniture was made of wood as well. His aesthetic was exactly the same as his character. Square, dignified, and simple. If he could straighten his back, he would never lie down. Lu Gong glanced at Fong Yen standing in front of him, pressed his raised palm down, and said softly, Sit down. Fong Yen, who was pretending to be a wronged wife, suddenly raised his head and looked at Lu Gong in disbelief. What was going on? Why did the scene suddenly change? According to the old routine, Grandpa should have slowly brewed a pot of tea and let Fong Yen cool for a while before snorting and shouting, Do you know what you did wrong? Since when did the domineering CEO start to walk the path of a romantic lead? He told you to sit down. Lu Gong saw Fong Yan's expression and naturally knew what he was thinking. His tone was a little unnatural. Fong Yan hurriedly sat down. If he didn't look for trouble, he wouldn't take the initiative to look for trouble. Otherwise, wouldn't he be born to be a bitch? Lu Gong looked at Fong Yan and said, You have hatred in your heart. Fong Yan was shocked again and said, Grandpa, you saw that too. Lu Gong patted an ancient book in front of him and said, Tsingguapan wrote, Ice Mirror, to teach people the art of judging people. Get rid of the grain and turn it into chaff, the marrow remains, the way of God. Mountains don't collapse, only 100 can suppress it, the so-called bones. A person's spirit has 2 eyes, a person's bones have a face. A scholar first looks at the god's bones. Getting straight to the point is the first. You, Fong Yen, have read thousands of books, so you can be considered half a scholar. A scholar first looks at the god's bones. Fong Yen, didn't you show it? No matter how relaxed your smile was, no matter how natural your movements were, your mind was always tense. It's like a treasured sword that can take a person's life at any time. Lu Gong sighed softly and said, In the past, you were happy because you were truly happy. Now, you are happy because you want to hide the unhappiness in your heart. Fong Yen, have you ever been this cautious and reserved when you came to my place before? Grandfather, there is hatred in my heart. Fong Yen could only confess to this old man. If he was so powerful, why didn't he go to the bridge to pick up stalls? You hate your father's murderer. Yes. Fong Yen nodded. I hated myself before too. Hate yourself. Hate what? The child wants to support him, but his parents don't. Or do you hate yourself for not being able to save your father? Both, Fong Yen said in a deep voice. If you hate the former, I can understand. Most people in the modern world don't know how to cherish. They only regret when they lose it. But that's regret, not hatred. If you hate yourself because of this, then you won't be able to rest easy in the underworld. But if you hate yourself for not being able to save your father, then that's the height of stupidity. Are you a god? Of course not, Fong Yen thought, if you're not my grandfather, I'll beat you up. Is there a need to be so sarcastic? Since you're not a god, why do you think you're omnipotent? Just do your best. Lu Gong comforted him softly. Do your best and leave it to fate. Some things are fate. Fong Yen looked at Lu Gong and said, Grandfather, you're well read. Do you also believe in fate? 1 is fate, 2 is luck, 3 is feng shui, 4 is yin virtue, and 5 is literature. Fate is number 1, followed by luck and feng shui. We can't change what is fated by the heavens no matter how hard we try. Since we can't change it, we can only force ourselves to accept it. Do you know why I haven't called you? Grandfather wanted me to figure it out on my own. Yes. I wanted you to figure it out on your own and walk out on your own, Lu Gong said earnestly. But you still can't figure it out, and you still can't figure it out. You're loyal, but your aptitude is really stupid. Fong Yen wanted to hit someone again. He was really envious of Lu Gong. Since he was born, fate had arranged for him to be his grandfather. Otherwise, this old man would already be lying on the ground. He didn't want to be a teacher and ran to be a school security guard. Who came up with this stupid idea? It's Baldy, Fong Yen said. Good brother, take the bullet for me. Grandfather won't look for trouble with you anyway. If the old man really does look for trouble with you, it won't be long before you become famous in the education world. I'm helping you. Who's Baldy? You wouldn't know even if I told you. But grandfather, you're right. His idea is really stupid. Professions don't differentiate between high and low. This is the point I've always insisted on. However, you can clearly be an excellent teacher, you can clearly teach more excellent students, but because you can't untie the knot in your heart, you can't get rid of the hostility in your heart, so you can only become a security guard. What does this mean? It means that my aptitude is stupid. Fong Yen learned to be smart. I'll scold myself first, so you can't scold me anymore, right? No, it means that your self-control is extremely poor. An excellent man, a successful man, they can adjust their emotions at any time, so that they can face any difficulties and challenges with the best mental state, whether it's doing business or anything else. They can get twice the result with half the effort. Fong Yen thought seriously and said, Grandfather, I understand. I'll go back and quit my job as a security guard. Ready to go back and be a teacher. Lu Gong's face finally showed a smile. No, I'm going to quit my job at school and focus on my own business. What business? Revenge. After a long silence, Lu Gong said, Fong Yen, I won't persuade you to give up on your hatred. A person who doesn't know how to repay kindness or fight back when insulted is incomplete, but I hope you can live up to the family rules and your conscience. Rising to his feet, Fong Yen bowed deeply to Lu Gong and said, Grandfather, I understand. Lu Gong waved his hand and said, You're dismissed. Otherwise, your grandmother will quarrel with me again and say that I bullied you. Fong Yen smiled obsequiously and said, Grandfather, you're scolding me to teach me a lesson. You don't need to scold other people. Stop flattering me, said Lu Gong. Treat Chaoga well. What? Fong Yen stared at Lu Gong with wide eyes. The old man had never asked about his feelings. What was wrong with him today? Fong Yen, Yixing's accident happened to coincide with the 3 years you were away. It was Chaoga who stayed by your grandmother's side when she was the most upset. I heard from Qining that Chaoga got into a few accidents. I told her not to come, and I even slammed the door in her face a few times, but she insisted on coming here once a week. Rain or shine. Fong Yen, no matter how big a man's career is or how ambitious he is, he should always leave some space for his family and spare some attention for his woman. Otherwise, how is he different from a beast? Feelings are the most difficult things to bear in life. I hope you can take care of yourself and don't let any harm come to the good girl. Lu Gong stared at Fang Yen sharply and said, I know you're not a heartless person, but if you betray Chaoga, I'll whip you no matter how hard your grandmother tries to stop me. What if she betrays me? Fang Yen said gloomily. What the hell was going on here? Why was he and Lu Chaoga a couple again? You deserve it. By the time Fang Yen and Lu Gong went downstairs, Grandma and Lu Chaoga had already prepared a table full of dishes. Grandma wiped her hands with a towel, then went up to Fang Yen and whispered, Did the old man scold you? No, Fang Yen said with a smile. Grandfather just asked me how I've been and was concerned about my health and my relationship. He couldn't say it in front of you, that stubborn old man, Grandma grinned. He's been stubborn all his life. Don't take anything he says to heart. Is that how you teach your kid? Lu Gong flared up again. He had spent his entire life teaching and educating people, so he liked to put his teaching methods into practice on Fang Yen. But his wife was always spoiling him, and every time, she would ruin the correct outlook on life that he had worked so hard to establish for Fang Yen. Kid. Fang Yen is old enough to get married and have kids, but he's still a kid in your eyes. Don't you always tell me not to be too hard on him when he's still a kid? That's right, I think he's a kid, but you men still think he's a kid. What kind of logic is that? Fang Yen tried to smooth things over and said with a smile, Why are there so many dishes today? Is it done? Can we eat now? Lu Gong glanced at Fang Yen and said, Bring some dishes to Qining and the others first, and a basket of steamed buns. Okay, I'll bring them over now, Fang Yen said. He brought over a few dishes and a basket of steamed buns. Qining and the others were overjoyed. They loved the home-cooked food made by Fang Yan's grandmother. Come, let's eat too, Grandma said. Lu Gong was in a good mood today, and he even went to the liquor cabinet to get a bottle of Mao Tai. I'll have a glass, and the rest is for Fang Yen. Grandma kept putting food into Fang Yen and Lu Chaoga's bowl, and her face lit up when she saw the young couple eating happily. Fang Yen, Grandma asked Fang Yen. Fang Yen looked up at her. Grandma, what is it? Tell me. I mean, about your marriage with Chaoga. Pfft, Fang Yen spat out the hot chicken soup in his mouth. Chapter 639. The soup is too hot. Fang Yen wiped his mouth with a napkin and said awkwardly. Can't you be more careful when you're eating? Grandma scolded him and got up to wipe the soup off the table from Fang Yan's mouth. All right, I'll stop talking, Fang Yen said with a smile. You can't stop talking. I was just asking you a question. Grandma wouldn't let it go. Is your marriage with Chaoga going to be put on the agenda? I mentioned it 3 years ago, but you and Chaoga didn't take my words to heart. You were still young back then, and I just wanted you to spend a few more years together to build a relationship. But now, 3 years have passed, and you're not young anymore. Isn't it time to think about it? 3 years after 3 years, how many 3 years can a person have in a lifetime? Back in the study, his grandpa had reminded him not to let down Lu Chaoga, who was a good woman. Now, his grandma was seriously discussing it at the dinner table. Fang Yen understood his grandfather and grandmother's attitude toward Lu Chaoga. In the 3 years that he had been away, Lu Chaoga had taken his place to take care of them and comfort them. She had walked into their lives and into their hearts. They had long regarded Lu Chaoga as part of their family. Fang Yen felt the need to explain this to his grandparents. He needed to tell them about his real relationship with Lu Chaoga. Were they just friends? Comrades? Or partners? Or partners who relied on each other in life? Or were they close friends who relied on each other? For a moment, Fang Yen couldn't determine the relationship between him and Lu Chaoga. She was an indispensable person in his life, but she wasn't the one who accompanied him all the time. They were still living under the same roof, and he lived next door to her, eating breakfast at the same table every morning. However, they hadn't reached that point yet. Fong Yan wanted to tell his grandparents that he had a girlfriend named Yiro. She was pretty and cute, sometimes a little muddle-headed, but good at fighting. She would be able to protect herself and their grandson from harm. Maybe I should find a time to bring Yiro over. They must like Yiro very much, right? They liked her as much as they liked Lu Chaoga. Fong Yan put down his chopsticks. When he was about to discuss this with his grandparents, Lu Chaoga, who had been eating, said, "Grandma, I'll talk to Fong Yan about it. Don't push him." Her grandmother loved Lu Xiaoga to the core, and she was very obedient to this girl who was very assertive. When she heard that she wanted to communicate with Fong Yan, her grandmother did not pursue the matter any further. Instead, she looked at Fong Yan and Lu Xiaoga earnestly and said, "I'm still thinking of having a grandson. Your mother has nothing to do all day, and she's not in a good mood. If there's a child that can keep her busy, the situation will probably be better." Fong Yan nodded and said, "I've been calling my mother these days. She's been in good spirits recently. I'll go back to visit her whenever I have time." Lu Gong put a piece of fish into his wife's bowl and said, "Let's eat. Let the children worry about their own things. Let's eat." Grandma began to crazily stuff fish and meat into Fong Yan and Lu Chaoga's bowls. In the GMC limousine, Fong Yan was watching an entertainment program on TV. From time to time, he would laugh at the host's wonderful lines and funny actions. Lu Chaoga was reading a newly published fashion magazine. She was marking a few pieces of clothing and jewelry that she liked. When the time came, her assistant, Meng Xiaoying, would naturally buy them for her according to her measurements. Both of them looked very busy, and the atmosphere in the car was not heavy. However, they both felt that there was something blocking between them. Qining didn't know what had happened. He turned around and said, "Mr. Fong, the steamed buns that your grandma made were really delicious. There were 9 steamed buns in a steamer, and I ate 4 by myself. The other 2 guys ate 2.5 each, and they even complained that they weren't full." Fong Yan smiled and said, "If you like it, I'll ask Grandma to steam more for you next time." Qining looked at Fong Yan with a puzzled look and said, "Usually, when I make such a rude request, don't you directly reject it? Why did you agree so easily today? You're not going to ask anything of me, are you?" "I beg you to shut up," Fong Yan said. Qining looked at Fong Yan and Lu Chaoga in surprise, then quickly pulled up the small partition between the driver's seat and the back seat. He knew that the 2 people in the back were in trouble. Let them fight to the death and love each other. Fong Yan took the remote control and turned off the TV with a bang. He looked at Lu Xiaoga and asked, "Why didn't you let me explain to Grandma?" "How do you explain that?" Lu Xiaoga asked. "I have to tell them about it," said Fong Yan. "Grandpa told me to treat you well in the study. On the desk, Grandma forced us to get married again. Chaoga, they should know that I already have a girlfriend. Then tell them that Lu Chaoga isn't the woman you like. She's just a close friend, a business partner, and a friend of yours." "Chaoga, Fong Yan, being rejected by a man, this is such an embarrassing thing for a woman," Lu Xiaoga said in a sad voice. Even the big boss of Chaoyan Technology, the Queen of Little Flame, had the emotional struggles of an ordinary girl. If this got out, the reporters would probably be shocked. "I'm sorry," Fong Yan looked at Lu Chaoga sincerely. "I just thought that we shouldn't let this misunderstanding get bigger and bigger. It'll only make things worse for us. I think they're not only urging me, but they're also urging you behind my back, right? I don't feel annoyed that they're urging me. On the contrary, I'm actually happy," said Lu Chaoga honestly. "Because someone cares about me, not because of benefits, but because of personal feelings. Lu Chaoga was wearing a white business suit. When she crossed her legs, the skirt of her short skirt was pulled up to the base of her plump thighs. She wore a light yellow silk shirt under the small silver jacket. The front of the shirt was pushed up high, and the buttons seemed to be ready to fly out at any time. Her long hair was loose, and the wind blew at the bottom. She wore light makeup, and her facial features were exquisite and flawless. She looked like a ripe peach. Everyone who saw her would have the same feeling. One bite, and the juice would splatter, sweet and delicious. She was already a 31-year-old woman. She had the best years of a woman, and she was at the peak of her career. However, this was also a dangerous stage, because the time between blooming and wilting was too short. Fang Yan, you didn't do me wrong, I'm the one who should be apologizing. Lu Chaoga didn't avoid Fang Yan's gaze and directly stated the secret in her heart. What you did today was right. You have the right and obligation to tell your grandparents that you have a girlfriend. You should even bring her in front of them for them to see. They are people you care about, and you hope that they can like each other. It's just that I made things difficult for you in the middle. Lu Chaoga smiled bitterly and said, I know it's wrong, but I don't want to correct it. I'm too selfish. They said that when I wasn't here, you treated them very well. I treated them very well because they treated me better. Lu Chaoga gently stroked the hair on her forehead, and her palm unconsciously stroked the beauty on the page. She said, after Aunt left, the only family I have in this world is you. I treat you as my family, and subconsciously, I also treat your grandparents as my family. After I found out that your father had an accident, I thought that they must be in a very bad mood, so I wanted to accompany them. No matter what, they are just two poor old people. On the way back, I encountered several ambushes. Although I managed to get through all of them safely, my grandfather still knew about it. He didn't allow me to visit them again. There were even several times when I stood in front of the small courtyard, and the door was tightly shut. No matter how I knocked on the door, no one answered. I still couldn't help but go over. Again and again. In the end, they were finally moved by me, and no longer forced me to leave, and no longer shut the door to prevent me from entering. Fang Yan, you are a very, very good person, and they are also very, very good people. It is precisely because you are too good to me that I am greedy for this feeling of home, so I can't bear to leave. So, when you wanted to expose all of this in front of my grandparents, I anxiously stopped you. Because I realized that I am not ready. Lu Chaoga looked at Fang Yan sincerely and said, Fang Yan, it is a fact that you have a girlfriend. We are friends, confidants, and business partners, but we are not lovers. This is also a fact, since we are not lovers, how can we always live together like this? Since we are not lovers, how can I always occupy your family as my family? I will leave eventually, I just hope that you can give me a little time. There was a trace of weakness in Lu Chaoga's eyes, and there was even a hint of pleading. I just, also want to have a family. Chapter 640. Have you ever had this kind of trouble? The person who loves me chases after me closely, and the person I love can't wait for it. Of course, it's also possible that you only have troubles after that. Lu Chaoga was the queen of Chaoyan, the founder of the Chaoyan Empire, and the legendary woman who single-handedly pushed the Little Flame brand to the world. She was a distinguished professor at Harvard Business School, and the audience was always full for 3 consecutive days. She was the youngest female entrepreneur to appear on the cover of Time magazine, but also the most valuable one. Wherever she went, she was the focus of the crowd. She was the darling of countless media cameras. She was Lu Chaoga, an existence that people admired and feared. According to Lu Chaoga's current status, her life should be extremely rich and busy. In the morning, she should attend an economic conference attended by many heads of state. In the afternoon, she should go to the United States or other countries to discuss some important cooperation. She should take a nap on the road and have a spa on her private plane. In the evening, she should attend a cocktail party to communicate with the leaders in various fields, drink with elegant and witty men, and listen to humorous and cute old men brag. However, she had chosen to live a different life. In addition to work, she would go to the mall to buy groceries, and then come back to cook for Fong Yen and even Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan. To put it in a very vulgar way, Lu Xiaoga's life was very incompatible with her family background. She could be a queen, but why did she choose to be a maid? However, Lu Xiaoga was willing to accept it, and she cherished and enjoyed all of it. Her parents died when she was young, but she was adopted by an enemy couple. It wasn't easy for her to have an aunt, but she left early, making her an orphan again. Fortunately, in her most difficult time, Fong Yen appeared, shielding her from the wind and rain, blocking the open and covert attacks for her, so that she could survive and have dignity and wealth. She was grateful to Fong Yen. If it weren't for Fong Yen, she would have been stuffed in the trunk of a car and burned to death like her aunt, right? She also relied on Fong Yen. She relied on his strength, his wisdom, and the sense of security that he could bring her. It was also because of his luck at that time that led to the current worrying and tangled situation. Lu Xiaoga was not Fong Yan's girlfriend, but many people misunderstood her as Fong Yan's girlfriend. On the other hand, Fong Yan's real girlfriend, Yi Ro, was unknown and had no sense of existence in her grandparents' hearts. Just as Lu Xiaoga said, she would choose to leave and take the initiative to solve this problem. She just needed a little more time. She needed time to adapt to living alone. This was her deepest fear, something she abhorred, but it was her fate. She could only accept it. She could be selfish once, but could she really be selfish for the rest of her life? Fong Yen felt Lu Xiaoga's sadness and reached out to hold Lu Xiaoga's hand. Her little hand was cold, and the knee she touched was also cold. Perhaps the coldness came from the inside out. The life she didn't want to face would come again. The lively and companionable things she liked would return to the original point, returning to being alone. I didn't mean that. Fong Yen said with infinite pity. We've known each other for so many years. I understand you, and you understand me. We understand a lot of things without saying it out loud. I hope I can live a better life, and I hope you can live a better life than me. Fong Yen, I know you don't mean that. I know you better than you know me. You are a kind person and a sincere person. You value relationships and don't want the people around you to be hurt. Lu Xiaoga held Fong Yan's hand tightly, looked at him and said, You're right. This is the ending we have to face. There will always be a solution. Fong Yan said with a smile, If you don't want me to explain to my grandparents, then I won't explain. I think one day, they will know the truth for themselves. What can you do? You have a girlfriend. You have to spend more time with her. You have to live with her. You have to take her to see all your relatives and friends. This is what a boyfriend or husband should do. Do we have to be together at that time? Do we have to live in the same house? Are you willing? Is your girlfriend willing? She's gentle. She's a very good person. If you get to know her, you'll definitely like her. Fong Yen. Lu Xiaoga interrupted Fong Yen and said, Don't recklessly use that woman's feelings for you just because she loves you. If she doesn't want to, but sacrifices herself for you, what will you do? If the two of us pretend to be stupid, will it be fair to her? Will she be happy? Will we be happy again? It started because of me, so it will end because of me, Lu Xiaoga said. I won't let you live alone again, Fong Yen said with a determined expression. Lu Xiaoga's lips curled up and she said, Are you going to introduce a boyfriend to me? I don't like to hear you say that. Fong Yen smiled warmly and said, I won't say it. I'll wait for you to find him slowly. I can't find him. Why? There is a grave in my heart, burying the undead. Lu Chaoge looked out of the window and sighed. Fong Yan could only hold her hand tightly, trying to pass his strength and warmth to her. He could also say, "Be my woman." Or he could just hold her in his arms and kiss her lips, but, is this the best solution? How can he face Yiro? How can he face his own heart? How can he face Lu Chaoge? What a proud and dignified woman she was. When Fong Yan was sleeping, Lan Shanggu called. Fong Yan pressed the answer button and asked, "What's up?" Mr. Luqi left early this morning. She rejected everyone's gifts. Lan Shanggu yawned and said sadly, "I was worried about Mr. Luqi's safety, so I didn't dare to leave the Blue Mountain Club, thank you." Fong Yan said with a smile. "You don't have to do this. Luqi likes peace and quiet. She doesn't want to be disturbed. You can go about your own business. You don't have to accompany her all the time. Even if a superstar comes, I don't have to accompany her. She's Luqi after all. Who asked her to be close to you and the woman? How can I not accompany her?" Lan Shanggu said with a smile. "I used your name to send gifts, but they were rejected by Mr. Luqi. I didn't keep a single one. These gifts are still in my treasure room. I have to get rid of them as soon as possible. Otherwise, the people who sent the gifts will think that Lan Shanggu deliberately took Mr. Luqi's gifts. What if someone comes to cause trouble?" Fong Yan thought for a while and said, "Then I'll sell them in the Blue Mountain Club again." Lan Shanggu was overjoyed and said, "Okay, I'll tell them that they belong to Mr. Luqi. Those who want them can buy them. Or we can hold an auction. In that case, the rich people in Huaqing will fight to buy them." Fong Yan refused and said, "There's no need to make such a big fuss. Luqi doesn't want to see herself become a tool for accumulating wealth. Just sell them at their proper value." "Okay." Lan Shanggu agreed and asked with a bitter smile, "What happens after I sell them? Where do I put the money? Those people won't agree to keep the money in my hands." Fong Yan thought for a while and said, "Donate the money to the Chaoyan Technology Charity Foundation in the name of Luqi. The Chaoyan Charity Foundation will give you a receipt and announce to the public how each sum of money is used." Because Lu Chaoge was an orphan herself, she could understand the loneliness of an orphan. When Chaoyan Technology was first established, she set up a charity foundation internally. Later, Chaoyan Technology grew rapidly and the funds that the foundation could control became larger and larger. The foundation was managed by herself and a few trusted people. They continuously donated schools, food, and clothes to children in poor areas. Lu Chaoge was very concerned about this matter, so she didn't have to worry that the money wouldn't be used for the children who really needed help. "I know how to handle it." Lan Shanggu said with a smile, "I'll tell them that you and Mr. Luqi have sent countless schools, books, and food to those children. I believe you can handle it." Fong Yan said with a smile. "By the way, Qin Shuer asked someone to call me yesterday to apologize. He hopes that we can forgive his recklessness and greed. I told him that psychological trauma can't be healed in a short time. It needs time and opportunity." Lan Shanggu said. "Do you think that what I said is particularly philosophical? It's like writing a poem." Fong Yan got up from the bed, pushed open the floor-to-ceiling window and walked to the balcony. He breathed in the fresh air outside and said, "We're not punishing Qin Shuer, but the people behind him. If we easily forgive them, those people will feel that there's no cost to making a mistake. Driven by their interests, they will attack us again and again. I don't want to see such a situation." "I understand," Lan Shanggu said. "Before the matter is resolved, I'll cancel all the meals." Fong Yan smiled and said, "I'm afraid that I have a meal on my side that won't be easy to cancel." Oh, I knew that there would be a lot of people looking for you. Lan Shanggu said with a smile, you decide. If you say let go, I'll throw Chen Guojing out. If you say continue, I'll let Chen Guojing stay at my Blue Mountain Club for a few more days. I'll give him good food and drinks, and he won't have any objections. Chapter 641. After hanging up the phone, Fang Yan went back to his room and changed into his white sportswear, then went to the yard to exercise. This was a compulsory lesson for him every day. Qi Ning and Fang Yingying were fighting. Qi Ning was still not a match for Fang Yingying, who had been practicing internal martial arts for a long time. However, compared to himself in the past, Qi Ning's strength had greatly improved. Internal martial arts focused on qi, while external martial arts focused on strength and stamina. Qi could be regenerated endlessly, but once strength and stamina were used up, there would be no more. Therefore, most external martial arts experts were not a match for internal martial arts experts. However, if an external martial arts expert broke through the shackles and stepped into the ranks of internal martial arts experts, then his achievements would often be astonishing. Therefore, Fang Yan was looking forward to Qi Ning's performance. Whenever he had nothing to do, he would give him some pointers. Bang! Qi Ning's body was sent flying by Fang Yingying's rhino dash. His body staggered backwards, then he fell on his butt. Fang Yingying laughed proudly and said, "Little Yingying, what do you think? This move's strength is strong enough, right?" Qi Ning gasped for breath and looked at Fang Yingying in shock. He said, "What's going on? I've already locked onto your life gate and blocked off your attack route. Why aren't you affected at all?" "Little Yingying, you idiot, it's because you've been tricked by me," Fang Yingying said, twisting his big butt. In the past, he was forced to practice martial arts, but now he was the one forcing Qi Ning to practice martial arts. Every day, he would beat Qi Ning up for fun. "What do you mean?" Qi Ning was confused. "The life gate you saw was the life gate I let you see. The attack route that you blocked was the attack route that I wanted you to block. Everything else was a trap." Fang Yingxiong was a good teacher, so he explained to Qi Ning very proudly. Qi Ning thought about it seriously and said, "I still don't understand. Is that life gate the real life gate? Is that attack route the real attack route? Since it's all true, why is it a trap?" This. Fang Yingying was at a loss for words. He said perfunctorily, "This depends on your understanding, your personal understanding. It can't be explained clearly in a short time. You can slowly experience it." Fang Yan snickered in his heart. Fang Yingying had just touched the edge of seeing a mountain not as a mountain, and seeing a river not as water, so there were many things that he could not explain clearly himself. Just like what Qi Ning had asked, the door of life was the door of life, and the route was the route. It was obviously locked and sealed, so why was it that he was deceived? Fang Yan walked in front of Fang Yingying and said with a smile, "Hero, use that rhinoceros charge again to attack me." Fang Yingying's expression changed greatly. He said, "Junior Martial Uncle, don't joke around so early in the morning." "I'm not joking with you," Fang Yan said. "Qi Ning still doesn't understand, you still don't understand. If the two of us demonstrate it, the two of you will have a clearer and more intuitive feeling. Maybe at that time, Qi Ning will understand, and you will also understand more and more." Fang Yingying shook his head and said, "The demonstration is fine, but can we change the person we're demonstrating to? For example, Qi Ning and I will perform again. I'll use Rhinoceros Charge to attack him, and you'll give us a live commentary. Another example, you and Qi Ning will do a demonstration, and I'll observe and try to improve myself. Qi Ning will be able to directly experience the wonders of breaking and resolving attacks during the demonstration with you." Qi Ning was shocked and quickly said, "I don't know Rhinoceros Charge, you do it." Fang Yingying, just the two of us, Fang Yan said in a strict tone. Use the rhinoceros charge that knocked Qining down to hit me. I'll receive this attack. Junior martial uncle, are you really my martial uncle or not? Fang Yingying wanted to cry, but had no tears, and said, I'm fatter than you, but I'm not as good looking as you. Why do you always see me as an eyesore? Fang Yan was amused by Fang Yingying's tearful words, and said, I don't see you as an eyesore, I just want to help you see things a bit more clearly. Come, or else I'll take the initiative to attack. Fang Yingying quickly wiped the smile off his face, and got into a stance for rhinoceros charge. Fang Yingxiong was usually a cheeky person, but when it came to battle, he was very careful. Because his master, Mo Qingdi, had warned him not to get his head chopped off while laughing foolishly. If that happened, no one would praise his optimism, they would only lament his stupidity. Not to mention that his opponent was junior martial uncle, Fang Yan, a powerful opponent who could easily chop off his head in the middle of a battle. Before the person arrived, the murderous intent came first. Fang Yan could feel Fang Yingying's fierce offensive, this kid was growing faster and faster. Perhaps, Mo Qingdi's departure and disappearance had left a deep scar in the hearts of these two brothers. After all, it was Mo Qingdi who brought them out from the beggars, and it was also Mo Qingdi who taught them martial arts, giving them a different kind of life. They had always regarded Mo Qingdi as their master and father. Their own master and father had disappeared, as children, how could they not be worried? Fang Yan waved at Fang Yingying and said, Come. Use all your strength. Roar, Fang Yingying roared, and then rushed towards Fang Yan's direction. Fang Yan lifted his right foot, and the tip of his foot drew a circle in the air on the grass. One hand was hidden behind his back, and the other was flat on his abdomen. Clang, 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 Fang Yingying was like an enraged rhinoceros, charging towards Fang Yan's body, with great momentum and vigor. Moreover, when he bent his body and ran, his body also hid many changes. At any time, he could change his attack according to the target's reaction. Fang Yan's flat right hand suddenly blasted out, and grabbed the rhinoceros's vital horn, the top of Fang Yingying's head. The circle-drawing foot moved forward and blocked all of his attack routes. This was the move Qining used to block Fang Yingying. Fang Yan's arm pulled back, and then suddenly shook forward. Bang! Fang Yingying was like a ball, sent flying by Fang Yan's palm. Bang! Bang! Fang Yingying's body rolled all the way until he hit the corner of the backyard of the small courtyard. Fang Yingying rubbed his aching head, crying and shouting, I knew it would be like this, I knew it would be like this. Qining ran over to help Fang Yingying up from the ground, and helped him pat the dust and grass off his body. Fang Yan chuckled as he looked at Qining and Fang Yingxiong, asking, Do you understand now? Qining nodded, saying, I think I understand a bit. Fang Yingying wiped his tears, saying, I don't understand. I just knew that my body of over 100 pounds was going to fall apart. Fang Yan glanced at Fang Yingying, saying, Wait until you can no longer feel the pain in your body, then you will truly understand. If you put it like that, Fang Yingying was so angry that his liver was hurting, saying, How can I refute you? Fang Yan smiled, walking straight to the side to practice martial arts. He let Qining and Fang Yingying mumble to each other, not knowing what they were talking about. After Fang Yan finished practicing, he went back to his room to take a shower, changed into a set of dry clothes, and sat on the balcony to read a book. Today was Saturday, so he didn't have to go to school or work. Fang Yan could use this entire day to do things he liked. The sound of a car engine came from the entrance of the courtyard. Lu Chaoga's secretary, Meng Xiaoying, had come with a black van. Seeing her instructing the bodyguards to move boxes from the van to the courtyard, Fang Yan stood up, and couldn't help but ask, Meng Xiaoying, what are you moving? Gifts, Meng Xiaoying said. What gifts? Aren't you going home? Meng Xiaoying stood in the grass in the courtyard, looking up to talk to Fang Yan on the balcony on the second floor. Yes, what's wrong? Fang Yan instantly understood, looking at Meng Xiaoying and asking, "These are gifts you want me to bring back?" "Yes, boss said you wanted to go home, so he gave me a shopping list," Meng Xiaoying said. "Our secretarial team of more than 10 people worked for 2 days before they finished buying it." "Mr. Fang, do you want to check it first?" Fang Yan sighed softly, saying, "No need." He sat back on the recliner, but he had already lost the mood to read. At the dinner table, he mentioned that he wanted to go home to see his mother and grandfather for the next 2 days. At the time, Lu Chaoge didn't say anything, but she firmly remembered this sentence in her heart. She asked people to buy gifts that were piled up like a small mountain. How could he bring it back? A beauty's kindness is heavy. Zhujiang Bank, one of the most luxurious and famous villas in Huaqing. Su Qi's birthday party was being held here. Su Qi wore a white strapless gown, with a pair of silver high-heeled shoes on her feet. On her head was a beautiful crown made of more than 100 Swarovski crystals of different sizes. She was the well-deserved female lead of the night. She was like a princess in the crowd, and everywhere she went, there would be enthusiastic cheers and heartfelt praises. "Su Qi, you look so beautiful tonight. Su Qi, you look like a princess. Su Qi, can we take a picture?" Su Qi walked through the crowd of friends and relatives, chatting and smiling, satisfying everyone's various requests. When no one was paying attention, she quietly walked to the backyard, wanting to take a breath. This kind of occasion made people feel physically and mentally exhausted, but they couldn't show any trace of impatience. "Everyone came for you, so what right do you have to be impatient? There's a heartbreaking sadness in your eyes," a man in a black suit said in a low voice as he walked out from a dark corner. Chapter 642. Su Qi turned around, looked at the man's smooth head, and said with a smile, "Baldy, you're not suitable for this kind of fresh and clean path." The Baldy said helplessly, "Ugly people don't have a way to go. No path is suitable for them. You won't either." Su Qi patted his shoulder and comforted him, "You can go the flirty route. You can't give others face, but you can give them warmth. There will always be a type that suits you." "What is the flirty route?" "They are usually meticulous and considerate, able to take care of the family, and know how to cook. More importantly, they can understand and sympathize with other people's feelings," Su Qi explained. Baldy was so excited that he shouted, I am. I have everything you said. I can cook, I take care of the family, I'm meticulous and considerate, and I can understand other people's feelings very well. When people reject me, I'm not angry at all, and I'll politely say it's okay. If I were a woman, I wouldn't like a man like me. So I'm the legendary flirty guy. I heard that girls nowadays like flirty guys. I'm not done yet." Su Qi interrupted Baldy and said, "Most of them are the slender and clean type. They dress comfortably and appropriately, and they won't appear too impetuous or exaggerated. They're like the sun, and they can give people a warm feeling." Baldy held his glass, turned around, and left. "If I were to look like the sun, would I be afraid that there wouldn't be flowers and grass to nourish me?" "Hey, don't go," Su Qi shouted. Baldy turned around with a sad face and said, "Missy, it's already very sad to look like this. Please don't discourage me." "I didn't want to discourage you," Su Qi said with a smile. "Then you still want me to be a flirty guy? Look at me, which girl will feel warm when they see me? At least they will feel safe, right? Who will find a safe man?" Okay, let's change the topic." Su Qi smiled with her eyes squinted, and said, "Is Mr. Fang really not coming? Look, Mr. Fang is such an insecure man, but so many people like him. But those girls who like unsafe men are praising me for looking safe. What kind of mentality do you have to say such things? Su Chi was speechless. Baldy glanced at Su Chi and sighed softly. Mr. Fong probably won't come, right? He seldom attends student gatherings. So that's how it is. Su Chi sighed. I thought I was different from others. Poochie, Baldy laughed. What are you laughing at? All the girls think that they're different from the others. Baldy, do you want to die? All right, don't be angry. I'll send you another message to see if Mr. Fong can come. Why don't you just call them? That won't do. Baldy straightforwardly refused. Mr. Fong lives with our headmaster Liu. If I call him and Headmaster Liu hears it, Headmaster Liu will ask who called. He said that Baldy invited me to a student's birthday party. Do you think I, as the head of security, can sit still? You're so useless. A head of security can make you so nervous. If you help me invite Mr. Fong, I'll find you a better job. How about it? No. Baldy waved his hand. I won't do a better job. I like being the head of security. Why? When I was a child, my family was poor, so I didn't have the opportunity to study. So, when I grew up, I especially liked to be with those cultured people, Baldy said with a serious face. His eyes had something that moved people. Seeing those children carrying school bags and skipping in front of me, I feel very happy. This kind of feeling, TSK, I can't buy it no matter how much money you give me. Su Chi looked at him and said, Baldy, you're really a good person. A very good person. Baldy drank the wine in his glass and said in a low voice, a lot of girls say that. Su Chi was amused by Baldy's words and said, remember what you promised me. Don't worry. I'll send a message to Mr. Fong now, Baldy promised. But I can't guarantee that he will come out. Su Chi, someone in the room called Su Chi's name. Su Chi waved to the security trio of Baldy, Wang Chang, and Li Jun. She said, you three must eat and drink well, don't be polite with me, I'll go in for a while and come out soon. Baldy waved his hand and said, go ahead, don't worry about us. Wang Chang and Li Jun were already red in the face and couldn't speak clearly. Who asked them to discover that the wine provided by the owner was all good wine that they had never seen before, heard of, or even understood? Baldy picked up a bottle of whiskey and took a big gulp. He looked at Wang Chang and Li Jun with disgust and said, look at you two, burp. In the shadow under the eaves of the corridor, a young man saw this scene and quickly ran to the front yard. A group of young men and women came to the backyard, talking and laughing. When they saw Baldy, Wang Chang, and Li Jun lying on the ground and drinking, they all had disgusted expressions on their faces. A young man in a black suit and a bow tie walked over and kicked Baldy's butt. He asked, who are you? Baldy didn't like it when people kicked his butt. It made him feel like a naughty child. He didn't like to be someone else's child. Baldy stood up with the bottle in his hand, stared at the group of young people in front of him, and shouted, which school are you students from? Go to class, you're going to be late. His steps were unsteady, and he was already a bit drunk. When he saw these young people, he mistook them for students and habitually carried out his duty. Class. Did you hear that? He's telling us to go to class. Ha ha ha, who is this guy? Is he a teacher from a school? Maybe, look at his hair, it's all gone. Being a teacher is really hard. These young people weren't afraid of Baldy's authority at all. They laughed and guessed Baldy's identity. The man with the bow tie looked at Baldy and asked, are you teachers from a school? Teachers from Rosefinch Secondary. Of course. Baldy struggled to open his eyes and looked at the young man in front of him, and said, no, then who are you? The man with the bow tie looked at Baldy and asked. We are Rosefinch Secondary Security, Baldy said with a proud face. I'm the head of security. Everyone looked at each other and felt like they were struck by lightning. Why are these security guards here? Did they sneak in? They can't come in without an invitation. If they can come in, they must have been invited by Suki. Suki's brain isn't fried, right? Why would she invite a group of security guards? Even if she wanted to have a uniform party, there's no need to have a security uniform party, right? The man with the bow tie waved his hand to signal for everyone to be quiet. He smiled at Baldy and said, "Is there a student named Fong Yen in your school?" Fong Yen. Baldy was stunned for a moment, then waved his hand and said, "No, he's not a student." "Then who is he?" the man with the bow tie asked with a dark look. Baldy looked into the eyes of the man with the bow tie and couldn't help but shiver. He sensed danger from the man's eyes. Stimulated by this strong sense of danger, he also sobered up. "Why do you want to know about Fong Yen?" "I'm just curious," the man with the bow tie said. "Tell me, how about it?" "If he's not a student, then who is he?" "I can't tell you," Baldy said. "Why not?" the man with the bow tie asked strangely. "Because I'm worried that you'll hurt him," Baldy said. "I see a murderous glint in your eyes." The man with the bow tie squinted his eyes and smiled. "Why would we? We just want to be friends with him." "No, you're not," Baldy waved his hand. "I've seen many people, you're not, sincerely looking to be friends." The man with the bow tie picked up a beer bottle from the ground, looked at the English words on it, and said, "Then tell me, how should I be friends?" "Smile. A smile that comes from the bottom of my heart. I'm willing to be friends with Fong Yen because he smiles at me like this. When he smiles at me, I feel like we've known each other for years. That's why I let him use the small boat that's under the watch of the security office, and even agreed to be his boatman. I guessed right, he really is a friend of a friend." "You don't think my smile is good?" The man with the bow tie looked up at Baldy and asked with a smile. "It's not that your smile is bad, it's that your smile is terrible. What kind of friend would make people scared when they smile?" Baldy said with a sincere expression. "Hey, Baldy, what are you talking about?" Someone behind the man with the bow tie was unhappy. "That's right, where did this little tramp come from? He's so ugly, seriously affects my appetite." The man with the bow tie waved his hand again, stopping everyone from attacking Baldy. He took out his wallet from his pocket and handed the stack of bills to Baldy, saying, "As long as you give me an answer, this money is all yours." Baldy waved his hand and said, "I can't do that. Also, let bygones be bygones." "What bygones?" "You said that I don't smile well." "Hey, I thought it was something serious." "Then why did you call me a little tramp and say that I'm ugly?" "I wasn't angry either, right? That's just lip service, you can't take it seriously. So you don't want to help me with this little favor?" "It's not that I don't want to help, it's that I can't. Fong Yen is my friend, my brother. How could I betray him?" "You really are ugly." The man with the bow tie looked at Baldy's drunken face and said. As he spoke, he raised the bottle in his hand and smashed it at Baldy's head. Crack, the bottle broke. Chapter 643. Southerners liked the view of the river. In their view, water represented gold. If they lived along the river, they would naturally make a fortune. The Pearl River side occupied the entrance of the Pearl River, and every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. Those who could live here were not simple people. I don't know if Baldy and the others came. If they found out that Su Chi was holding a birthday party here, they would probably be scared to the point of wetting their pants. Thinking of Baldy and the other's surprised expression, Fong Yen couldn't help but grin. With such a group of funny friends around him, his life was full of lively and joyful elements. Fong Yan handed the invitation to the security booth. After the security verified the authenticity of the invitation, he saluted the car respectfully and opened the door to let them pass. Driving in the middle of the spacious driveway of the villa community, Fong Yan was not surprised at all. He had long guessed that Su Chi's background was not simple, and the subsequent events had verified his guess again and again. According to the roadside signs, Fong Yan found Su Chi's home without a hitch. Her home was really too easy to find. Because the third house at the mouth of the river was where she lived. Therefore, the address on the invitation was written, Pearl Riverside 003 Building. Fong Yan parked the car in the spacious parking lot at the door and then walked toward the villa's small courtyard. "Sir, please show me your invitation." The old butler at the door performed his duty dutifully. "Okay." Fong Yan handed over the invitation in his hand. "Mr. Fong," a surprised voice came over. Fong Yan looked up and saw Su Chi, who was wearing a white dress and a diamond crown on her head, quickly coming in his direction. The old butler bowed slightly to Fong Yan and said with a smile, "It seems that there is no need to verify it." Indeed. Fong Yan liked this polite and humorous little old man very much, so he said with a smile. Su Chi walked quickly to Fong Yan and said happily, "Mr. Fong, I have been worried that you would not come. If that was the case, I would be too disappointed. I was worried that the Birthday Star Guild would be disappointed, so I came," Fong Yan said with a smile. He handed over the gift box in his hand and said, "You look very beautiful today." "Thank you, Mr. Fong." Su Chi took the gift and said, "I've already said that you coming is the best gift I've ever received." Fong Yan made a shushing gesture and said, "Keep your voice down, or the other guests won't know if they should take out their gifts, understood?" Su Chi blinked and said to the housekeeper beside her, "Uncle Fu, don't tell anyone what I said. Otherwise, humph." "Miss, what were you talking about?" "I'm deaf, so I can't hear you," the butler said with a smile. The three of them laughed. Su Chi stepped forward and held on to Fong Yan's arm. Su Chi pointed at Fong Yan and said, "This is our school's teacher, Fong Yan." "Teacher?" Su Boya and Mei Xinjian looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. They knew that Rosefinch Secondary School rules were extremely strict. Teachers and students were definitely not allowed to fall in love. Su Chi looked at her parents' expressions and asked with a smile, "You two seem to be very worried. Could it be that you think I'm bringing my boyfriend back to see you?" Su Boya glared at Su Chi and said, "Su Chi, don't joke with the teacher like this." Su Boya took the initiative to extend his hand to Fong Yan, and his attitude suddenly became much more amiable and warm. He said with a beaming face, "Mr. Fong, welcome to Su Chi's birthday party." Fortunately, Su Chi is a sensible child and knows to invite the teacher. Otherwise, it would be a dereliction of our duty as parents. Fong Yan shook hands with Su Boya again and said, "Mr. Su, you're treating me like an outsider. I'm also very happy to be able to attend Su Chi's birthday party." Mei Xinjian looked at his daughter thoughtfully and said, "Su Chi, you have to take care of Mr. Fong. Don't be impolite." "Mom, don't worry. I definitely won't let Mr. Fong be thirsty or hungry," Su Chi said with a smile. She once again extended her hand to hold Fong Yan's arm. Fong Yan felt a little uncomfortable and wanted to avoid it, but he was worried that he would hurt her pride in front of Su Chi's parents. "Su Chi, let's not," Fong Yan said in a low voice. "How about this? You're my teacher and my elder. This is a very normal etiquette, Mr. Fong. You aren't thinking the wrong thing, are you?" Su Chi's gentle voice spoke into Fong Yan's ear. Fong Yan tried to avoid it once, but after failing, he didn't try again. Wouldn't it be more suspicious if he made too big of a move in front of Su Chi's parents? Looking at Fong Yen and Su Chi's departing figures, Su Boya said with a smile, "It was a false alarm." So it's Su Chi's teacher. Su Chi looks gentle on the surface, but she's proud and aloof. She usually wouldn't take the initiative to bring strangers home. Today, she took the initiative to invite Mr. Fong to her birthday party, which proves that this Mr. Fong is very capable. I'm afraid it's not just a teacher-student relationship, right? Mei Xinjian sized up Fong Yan's back with a sharp gaze and said, "When did you ever see your daughter take the initiative to hold another man's arm? Other than you?" Su Boya's expression, which had just relaxed, froze again. Su Chi took out 2 glasses of iced gold wine and handed one to Fong Yen while holding the other herself. "Mr. Fong, thank you for coming to my birthday party." Su Chi raised the wine glass in the air and said, "I'm really, really happy. Come, let me offer you a toast." Fong Yan raised his glass and clinked it with hers, saying, "I just wanted to ask for a drink. Then I'll accompany you for a few drinks today," Su Chi said with a smile as she finished the gold wine in her glass in one gulp. "Looks like you can hold your liquor well." Fong Yan also finished the gold wine in his glass in one gulp. He looked at Su Chi and asked, "Where's my friend you said you wanted to see?" Su Chi looked around and said, "I didn't see him either. I don't know where he went to study earthworms." "Mr. Fong, shall we have another drink?" Fong Yan drank 2 more glasses with Su Chi. In the process, people kept coming to talk to Su Chi and propose toasts. Fong Yan looked at Su Chi and said, "Su Chi, I saw a lot of people looking for you. Go do what you need to do. I'll go talk to Baldy and the others for a while." "All right. They're in the backyard, Mr. Fong, I'll go find you in a bit." Fong Yan had just walked to the backyard when he saw the bowtie man throw the wine bottle at Baldy. The wine bottle broke. Baldy's head was also bleeding. Baldy's body spun twice on the spot before falling to the ground with a bang. The bowtie man threw the wine bottle in his hand onto the grass and said with a face full of sarcasm, "A little security guard, I didn't expect him to be so loyal." Little security guards are not only loyal. Fong Yen walked towards Baldy step by step and said with a hint of anger in his voice, "They're also willing to stand up for their brother." Chapter 644. Baldy was innocent. The person LV Kailuan really hated was Fong Yen. LV Kailuan's father, LV Zhonghang, and Su Chi's father, Su Boya, had been close friends for many years and were also business partners. Because their fathers were very close, Su Chi and LV Kailuan had known each other since they were very young. They played together, studied together, and traveled together. The 2 of them could be said to be childhood sweethearts. When they were young, the adults of the 2 families had more than once said that the 2 of them should be engaged. The speaker had no intention, but the listener had other thoughts. LV Kailuan liked Su Chi, but he had never expressed it. However, he knew that Su Chi must belong to him, just as he felt that he also belonged to Su Chi. Su Chi was still too young and young. He wanted to give her more time, to let her get more freedom. He thought that Su Chi should understand his thoughts. When she was tired of playing and had enough, she would return to his embrace. At that time, everything would be logical, and they would naturally walk into the palace of marriage hand in hand. They would love each other for a lifetime and become the only one for each other. LV Kailuan imagined their future to be extremely beautiful. He felt that he was a very open-minded and magnanimous man. If it was any other man, how could he allow the girl he liked to play around in this world of sensual pleasures? It was not until Li Mingming ran over and said that he had a rival in love and that Su Chi might have fallen in love with a man named Fong Yen that Wang Kailuan realized that things seemed to have changed. Su Chi, perhaps, really didn't belong to him anymore. Even if she didn't belong to him, she couldn't belong to anyone else. This was also the reason why he brought a group of people to tease Baldy and wanted to find out information about Fong Yen from him. It was just that the little security guard really didn't know what was good for him. After being tempted by money, he still remained unmoved, which stimulated the hostility in his bones. Knocking down a little security guard was a very shameful thing for him. Because of the difference in status, he didn't feel any sense of accomplishment from this victory. Instead, he felt that hitting someone in front of his friends had damaged the refined image that he had always maintained. Seeing that Baldy was knocked down with a wine bottle, Wang Chang and Li Jun sobered up and strode toward the direction where Baldy was lying. Director, are you all right? It's bleeding, hurry up and stop the bleeding. Wang Chang took off his suit and pressed the fabric of his shirt against the wound on Baldy's head. Li Jun screamed in a hoarse voice, hurry up and save them, who can help save them? Fong Yen walked to Baldy and squatted down. He opened Wang Chang's suit and reached out to touch the wound on Baldy's head. He said, don't worry, it'll be fine. As he spoke, he took out a small brown bottle from his pocket. He uncorked the bottle and poured most of the contents over Baldy's head, smoothing it over evenly with his finger. Baldy had no hair, so he avoided a lot of unnecessary steps. Then, something strange happened. The mint-flavored medicine mixed with the blood on Baldy's head and turned into a muddy paste. The mushy substance was a natural hemostatic membrane. The bleeding had stopped. Fong Yen picked up Wang Chang's suit and wiped the blood on his hands. You two take care of him, Fong Yen said. Mr. Fong, Wang Chang said with a sad face, they hit people for no reason. Fong Yen nodded and said, I know. Fong Yen got up and walked step by step toward where LV Kailuan was standing. Since Fong Yen appeared, LV Kailuan's eyes had been on Fong Yen. At first, he didn't know Fong Yan's identity. It wasn't until the little security guard called him Mr. Fong that LV Kailuan realized that this guy was the Fong Yen that he wanted to know, another little security guard. LV Kailuan thought indignantly in his heart. He didn't like his opponent or love rival to be a security guard. If that happened, he felt that his style would be dragged down countless times. It would be such a shameful thing if this spread out. Competing with a security guard for a woman, even if he won, where was the fun in it? Fong Yen walked toward LV Kailuan step by step. His footsteps were heavy, and each step was stepping on the hearts of everyone present. Bang, 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 intentionally or unintentionally, everyone was calculating Fong Yan's steps in their hearts. He didn't have the intention to stop, as if he wanted to confront LV Kailuan face to face. LV Kailuan's pupils contracted slightly. He felt the invisible pressure brought by Fong Yen. He felt that each step was like knocking on his heart, his body was slightly trembling, and his calves were inadvertently shaking. He wanted to retreat, he wanted to run away. However, he couldn't do that. He was LV Kailuan, a high and mighty young master. He couldn't be scared away by a little security guard. Close. Infinitely close. Fong Yen walked in front of LV Kailuan. His eyes looked at LV Kailuan's eyes, and his chin was about to touch LV Kailuan's nose. As long as he pouted, it was possible for him to kiss LV Kailuan's hair. Because of his height advantage, he looked very aggressive. Fong Yen could hear LV Kailuan's rapid breathing, and he could feel his fierce heartbeat. He knew that he was afraid, and he knew his emotions well. You, LV Kailuan opened his mouth to say something harsh, but found that he didn't have that kind of courage at all. He didn't know why, but his pride, his self-esteem, and the arrogance and hostility in his heart all disappeared in front of this man. He knew that Fong Yen and Baldy, who was knocked down by him with a bottle, were companions, teachers, or security guards. He wouldn't care about such identities. However, he was afraid of him. LV Kailuan swallowed his saliva and said with a trembling voice, "What do you want to do?" Do what you just did to my friend, Fong Yen said. LV Kailuan turned and ran. He didn't want to be hit in the head by the bottle. He didn't know why, but when this man said these threatening words in front of him, he believed that he could do it. Fong Yan didn't chase after him, but with a flick of his foot, an empty bottle flew into the air. When the wine bottle fell to a certain height, Fong Yan leaped up and kicked out with his leg. Bang! Fong Yan was like a superb football player, and the bottle became the football that the player kicked out. Without any suspense, the football hit the target, LV Kailuan's head. Crack! The bottle made a crisp cracking sound. LV Kailuan's body rushed forward a few steps, and then fell to the ground with a plop. Ah! A girl's scream was heard. Someone come, murder, murder, security, security. Su Kailuan was injured. Hearing the crying outside, the people in the villa were alarmed, and one by one, they all ran out. A middle-aged woman in a black dress saw LV Kailuan lying on the ground, and with a scream, she rushed toward LV Kailuan with large strides. Kailuan, Kailuan, what's wrong with you? Heavens, there's blood. As the host of today's banquet, Su Boya hurriedly gave an order when he saw an injured person appear in the courtyard. He said, quickly send Kailuan to the hospital, there's a private hospital nearby. A few bodyguards in black rushed over, nimbly lifted LV Kailuan, and ran outside. The middle-aged woman grabbed Su Boya's arm and said, Su Boya, you have to give me an explanation. After saying that, she ran outside with her son, who was being carried away. Without waiting for Su Boya to ask, someone explained the situation to him. Uncle, he was the one who injured Brother Kailuan. He threw a bottle at Brother Kailuan's head. The slightly plump Lu Zhonghang stared at Fong Yen with an unfriendly gaze, and said, Boya, is this also your guest? Su Boya knew that his old friend was on the verge of exploding, and said, Zhonghang, don't be angry. Let's first clarify the situation. How exactly can we clarify the situation? Lu Zhonghang said bluntly, they've already said it very clearly. This wretched tramp injured Kailuan, and he used a bottle to smash Kailuan's head. Look at the bottle dregs on the ground, even the bottle was smashed by him. How ruthless must he be? Su Boya was also very angry that something like this had happened. However, this was a teacher brought by his daughter, so he had to at least maintain the appropriate etiquette. Su Boya looked at Fong Yen and said, Mr. Fong, what's going on? Did you really use a beer bottle to injure someone? Fong Yen nodded and said, yes. That person just now, his name is Lu Kailuan. I was indeed the one who injured him. Mr. Fong, no matter how good Su Boya's temper was, he couldn't hold it in anymore. How could you injure someone? You're a teacher. Do you understand the meaning of being a teacher? I understand, Fong Yen said. But I also hope that you can understand the meaning of another phrase, equality of all living things. Fong Yen pointed at the unconscious Baldy on the ground and said, when you were rushing to send Lu Kailuan to the hospital, did you notice that there was another injured person lying here? Just like how you only saw Lu Kailuan being injured by a beer bottle, why didn't you see that there was another person injured by a beer bottle here? Was it just because the former was the son of a tycoon, and the latter was just a security guard? If you hadn't provoked him, how could he have been injured? Lu Zhonghang was burning with anger. He pointed at Fong Yen and shouted, what? You're beating people up with reason. He turned to stare at Su Boya and said, Old Su, don't blame me for not giving you face. I don't care what your relationship with this bastard is, if he doesn't give me an explanation today, he can forget about leaving this courtyard. Chapter 645. In the eyes of parents, their own children were always the best. LV Zhonghang was certain that Lu Kailuan was the one being bullied. He was knocked down by those vulgar security guards using some dirty tricks. His son had received a high-quality education and had gone through strict aristocratic etiquette training. How high could the quality of a security guard be? Beating someone up without saying a word, wasn't that something they would do? His own son being knocked out with a wine bottle was something unbearable to LV Zhonghang. Who wouldn't have a temper when they were rich and had a good background? Thus, after LV Zhonghang threatened Su Boya not to lend a hand, he shouted loudly, "Men, beat this brat up until even his own mother can't recognize him. Pay him back double for how he treated Karen." Clang clang clang, two burly men dressed in black walked out from the crowd and strode in the direction of Fang Yan. Tonight's birthday girl, Su Qi, was in the inner room dealing with the praises of a few elders. When she heard the screams outside, she quickly ran out. When she came out, she happened to see LV Zhonghang instructing the bodyguards to teach Fang Yan a lesson. Uncle LV, Uncle LV, Su Qi lifted her skirt and quickly ran in front of Fang Yan. She used her frail body to shield Fang Yan and looked at LV Zhonghang with a pleading expression, saying, "Uncle LV, is there a misunderstanding? He's my teacher, how could you let someone hit him?" LV Zhonghang's expression was slightly kinder when he faced Su Qi because he knew that her father was Su Boya, but her mother was Mei Xinjian. His voice was still filled with anger as he said, "Teacher. Just because a teacher is a teacher, he can casually hit someone. Even if a teacher hits someone in school, it's considered corporal punishment. I can sue him. If a teacher hits someone outside the school, he's a hooligan, a wretched scoundrel. He even dared to hit someone with a wine bottle. Which school's teacher would dare to do such a thing? What kind of teacher is such a person? He's nothing more than a bandit." Su Qi turned around to look at Fang Yan and said, "Uncle Lu, Mr. Fang wouldn't hit someone for no reason, right?" In between, Su Qi, what do you mean? LV Zhonghang's anger flared up again. He wouldn't hit someone for no reason. In other words, Karen deserved to be beaten up. Does he deserve to be smashed in the head with a wine bottle? Uncle Lu, that's not what I meant. I just hope that everyone can calm down and analyze the truth together. In the face of LV Zhonghang's aggressive attack, Su Qi was still calm. He looked at LV Zhonghang with spirited eyes and said with a sincere expression. Seeing his beloved daughter speak up for Fang Yan, Su Boya had no choice but to step forward to calm things down. He looked at LV Zhonghang and said, "Old LV, don't be rash. Why don't you just listen to the person in question? We're not people who can't tell right from wrong. Just be quiet. You want to talk about it. Old Su, it's easy for you to say. My son was beaten until he fainted. What else can he say? What can he say? The person in question is still fine, but I won't listen to what he has to say." Su Boya pointed at the young people in the courtyard and said, "Aren't they standing together with Karen? Why don't we just listen to what they have to say?" Su Boya turned around and swept a glance at the young people. He said, "You must tell the truth. Don't be biased or hide anything." Su Qi turned to look at Fang Yan and said, "Mr. Fang, tell us the situation first." Fang Yan nodded and pointed at Baldy, who was lying on the ground. He said, "When I came, I saw Karen use a wine bottle to smash my friend to the ground. So, I used the same method to knock him to the ground. Those who humiliate others will be humiliated by others. Those who hit others should naturally be beaten back. You bastard." What LV Zhonghang couldn't stand the most was Fang Yan acting high and mighty, as if he was in the right and was trying to reason with him. Su Boya stared at a weak-looking young man and shouted, "Su Li, why did Karen hit someone with a wine bottle?" "Because." Su Li carefully glanced at the young people around him. He didn't dare to answer his uncle's question. "Su Li, tell the truth. Don't let others influence you," Su Boya shouted sternly. "Because Karen was jealous," Su Li said softly. Karen heard that Su Chi had a good relationship with a guy with the surname Fong, so she ran over to ask the bodyguard who the person with the surname Fong was. The bodyguard refused to say, so Karen, Su Chi looked at Baldy guiltily. She didn't expect that the matter had started because of her. She knew how Karen felt about her, and she had always treated Karen as a very good friend because they had grown up together. However, that was all. How could friendship replace love? Someone must have overheard the conversation between her and Baldy in the backyard, and then Lu Kailuan came to cause trouble for Baldy. Lu Kailuan knocked Baldy down with a wine bottle, and teacher Fong Yen knocked Lu Kailuan down with a wine bottle. So Karen used a wine bottle to smash someone's head in a fit of rage. Su Boya asked coldly. Yes. Su Boya turned to look at LV Zhonghang and said, Old Lu, look at your good son. Children can't be spoiled. Karen was the one who attacked first, so she was in the wrong first. Old Su, are you kidding me? It was my son who was injured. How can the life of a small security guard be compared to my son's life? Su Boya frowned slightly and said, Old Su, what you said is very wrong. Just now, Mr. Fong said that all living beings are equal. Whether it was Karen or the injured security guard, they were raised by their parents. Compared to their parents and relatives, they were all living beings. In your eyes, Karen's life is naturally the most important. In the hearts of his parents and children, that little security guard's life is above everything else. It's all life, so how can there be a difference in status? Old Su, who are you speaking for? LV Zhonghang was rather dissatisfied with Su Boya's attitude. I'm not helping anyone. I'm reasoning with you, Su Boya said. Old Lu, we've known each other for many years. You should know my character. I think you were too rash in this matter. This matter is clearly Karen's fault. If you let someone beat up Mr. Fong, that would be adding to your mistake. Then my son was beaten up for nothing. Su Boya pointed at Baldy, who was in Wang Chong's arms, and said, What about him? What did he do wrong? He was beaten up by Karen to this state. At the end of the day, this matter is Karen's fault. Zhonghang, you are Karen's elder. You should stand up and take responsibility for this matter for Karen. Don't let others laugh at us for not being broad-minded, and even more so, don't let others insult us for using our power to bully others. Fong Yen stared at Su Boya with a burning gaze. At this moment, he had a whole new level of respect for this man. To be able to choose justice in the face of friendship and justice, how rare was such a person? What a joke. My son was beaten up. As his father, not only did I not get justice for him, but I also have to apologize to the person who beat him up. LV Zhonghang clearly found it hard to accept Su Boya's solution. He stared fiercely at Fong Yen and said, Why don't I let someone beat him up first before apologizing to him? LV Zhonghang, Su Boya is doing this for your own good. The enchanting and sexy Mei Xinjian stood beside LV Zhonghang and said, You don't even know who he is? And you want to beat him up? If you can even touch a finger of his tonight, I, Mei Xinjian, will write my name backwards. If you don't believe me, you can try. Hearing Mei Xinjian's threat, LV Zhonghang was slightly shocked. You don't even know who he is. Isn't he Su Chi's teacher? Could it be that he has a hidden identity? If you can even touch a finger of his, I, Mei Xinjian, will write my name backwards. In Mei Xinjian's eyes, I'm no match for this young man. LV Zhonghang and Su Boya Mei Xinjian had been husband and wife for many years. Although Mei Xinjian's style of speaking was sharp and direct, she never lied. Even she could not help but give him such an obvious reminder. Did that mean that he was indeed no match for that young man? LV Zhonghang's expression was gloomy. After hesitating for a long time, he sighed deeply and said, I didn't expect Karen to do such a thing. I, LV Zhonghang, did not teach my son well. LV Zhonghang walked in front of Baldy and said to Wang Chang, quickly send him to the hospital for treatment. I'll bear all the expenses. I'll send my secretary with you to make some arrangements. When he wakes up, I'll visit him at the hospital and discuss the matter of compensation with him. What do you think of this? Wang Chang looked at Fang Yan. He could not make the decision for such a big matter. Fang Yan nodded. He looked at LV Zhonghang and said, Mr. LV, you're a role model for us. I'll agree on behalf of my friend. LV Zhonghang did not like Fang Yan, the culprit who injured his son. He had no interest in talking to him. After giving some instructions to the secretary beside him, the secretary, Wang Chang, and Li Jun carried Baldy outside to send him to the hospital for examination and treatment. After sending the patient away, LV Zhonghang turned and walked outside. Su Boya shouted, Old LV, Old LV. LV Zhonghang did not turn his head and said, Old Su, I'll come drink with you another day. Su Boya sighed softly. He glanced at his daughter, Su Qi, and said, Take good care of Mr. Fang. Good job, Dad. Su Qi gave her father a thumbs up. In her heart, her father was the most just and great man in the world. Silly girl. Su Boya shook his head with a bitter smile. He held his wife, Mei Xinjian's hand and prepared to return to the house. Boring. It's really boring. A lazy voice came over. Everyone looked over and saw a handsome and flawless man walking toward the crowd under the moonlight. Countless people exclaimed in surprise. Chapter 646. He had a beautiful appearance and a pure and innocent personality. He had a sweet smile and beautiful eyes. There was a word used to describe this kind of man, gorgeous man. This was the most handsome man Fang Yan had ever seen, except for himself. Even if he was a woman, he was definitely one in a million. This man was so beautiful that when he appeared bathed in the moonlight, both men and women were dazzled. The reaction of the young girls was even more direct. They could not help but scream out loud. It was as if they had welcomed their idol. Oh my God, it's Mei Xue. It's really Mei Xue. He's really handsome. I like him so much. I haven't seen him in a long time. I didn't expect him to appear at Chi-Chi's birthday party. Chi-Chi is so lucky. The most low-profile and high-profile of the four prodigies of watching, Mei Xue. There were too many rumors about this man, so many that even if he did not appear in public all year round, news about him could continuously reach the ears of the public. For example, Mei Xue went to learn how to paint. His painting, Spring Walk, was sold at Sotheby's London auction for tens of millions. Mei Xue went to study how insects lay eggs. His thesis was praised by the world's entomologist, Fabre. Mei Xue went to study perfume. The perfume he created attracted the attention of countless socialites. To put it simply, this was a rich, talented, and willful guy. Hearing these rumors, Fang Yan felt that Mei Xue was like the protagonist of a web novel. He was omnipotent and capable of everything. There was a small group of people in this world who were so talented that they could overturn the entire world if they were not careful. Mei Xue ignored the shouts of the girls and walked straight to Su Boya and Mei Xinjian. He looked at Su Boya with a smile and said, "Brother-in-law, I've troubled you again today." Su Boya looked at Mei Xue with a smile. It seemed that his brother-in-law liked this brother-in-law very much. He said, "Xue, why are you here? I didn't hear that you would come." He paused and asked, "What did you trouble me with this time?" Mei Xue did not answer his question. He looked at Mei Xinjian and said, "You can ask my sister. You are a learned man. Don't waste your time and pollute your ears with such filthy things." Mei Xinjian looked at his brother Mei Yingxue dotingly and said with a charming smile, "You love your brother-in-law. You don't want him to waste time and dirty his ears. Aren't you afraid that your sister will waste time and dirty her ears?" Mei Yingshue's smile gave people a sense of elegance. She said, "Sister, you're a heroine of the business world. You're much better at killing enemies than my brother-in-law." "You sure know how to talk," Mei Xinjian said with a smile. "I've invited him for you, but I don't know if he'll give face to a weirdo like you." Mei Yingxue nodded and walked to Su Qi. She took out a jade pendant and hung it around Su Qi's neck. "Don't you like this? I'm giving it to you. Treat it well." The jade pendant was dark green in color and carved into the shape of a koi. Under the moonlight, the green carp was like a living creature, as if it could spit out air bubbles one after another when it opened its mouth. Su Qi's face was full of surprise. She carefully stroked the emerald koi on her chest and said, "I asked you for it before, but you didn't want to give it to me. Why are you giving it to me now? How old were you when you asked me for it?" "You were 8 or 9 years old. I didn't dare to give it to you. I don't care about its value, but I care about the meaning of its existence. I like it, so I want it to exist in good condition. Today is your birthday. I'm giving it to you. I hope you can understand that some things are broken. They can't be put back together. So, I hope you can cherish every choice you make like you cherish this koi. Happy birthday." Su Qi hugged Mei Yingxue and said, "Thank you, uncle. I hope you'll look better." Mei Yingxue smiled. He didn't feel embarrassed because of the little girl's praise. He said calmly, "I'll try my best not to let you down." "Ah!" The girls screamed again. It was as if Mei Yingxue hugged them too. Mei Yingxue let go of Su Qi and said, "I want to talk to Mr. Fang." Su Qi nodded and smiled. "It took me a lot of effort to invite Mr. Fang to my birthday party. Don't make him angry." Mei Yingxue caressed the crown on Su Qi's head and said, "I won't. I'm just afraid that he'll make me angry." Mei Yingxue walked towards Fang Yan and extended his hand. He smiled and said, "Mr. Fang, I've heard so much about you. I hope you don't mind that I asked Su Qi to invite the guest on my behalf. After all, taking the initiative to look for him would only make him feel shameless. It would be best if he could have an artificial, chance encounter here. Please forgive me for being a little selfish." Wow! Everyone was in an uproar. They didn't expect Mei Yingxue, one of the 4 prodigies of watching, to take the initiative to greet a teacher. Moreover, from Mei Yingshue's words, Fang Yan came because Mei Yingxue asked Su Qi to invite him. Among the 4 prodigies, Mei Yingxue was the most mysterious and the most arrogant. He didn't care about ordinary people. He didn't care about ordinary people either. Some people said that Mei Yingshue's eyes were straight because he only paid attention to what he wanted. Other people or things meant nothing to him. However, such a person with straight eyes actually took the initiative to walk towards Fang Yan. What did this mean? Who the hell is this guy? Why does young Master Mei give him so much face? That's right. I've never seen Mei Yingxue take the initiative to shake hands with someone. Luckily LV Zhonghang didn't use force. Otherwise, Fang Yan held Mei Yingshue's hand and said with a smile, "Su Qi didn't tell me that young Master Mei is treating." "Oh, is that so?" Mei Yingxue looked at Su Qi in surprise and said with a smile, "Qi is an independent person. It's hard to change her mind once she decides on something. She always thinks that socializing is a very boring thing. She also thinks that disputes in social occasions are even more boring. There's not much meaning in who bullied who and who was bullied by who. It's just something to chew on when some bored people drink tea and drink wine. Because the painting in my hand was lacking the final stroke, I came a little late. I saw the end of the farce just now. Mr. Fong must feel that it's very boring, right? It's quite boring. Fong Yen nodded. He heard that Meng Shue's catchphrase was boring. It was said that in his eyes, there wasn't much that was interesting in this world. But, I had to do it. What a good, had to do it. Meng Shue laughed heartily. It had to be said that this guy was really good-looking when he laughed. Even a 100% straight man like Fong Yen wanted to look at him a few more times. The eyes of the women and young girls at the scene lit up. Some people even took out their phones to take pictures of him. This was really a world that valued appearance. Some people were born with the halo of a star. During the Wei and Jin dynasties, Wei Jie, a handsome man from the Western Jin dynasty, was surrounded by people everywhere because of his outstanding appearance. In the end, he died of illness due to the psychological pressure. At that time, people said that he was stared to death. Fong Yan only hoped that the killing of Wei Jie would not happen again. It's just like how I don't like to see you, but I have to do it, Meng Shue said. I'm curious. Su Qi didn't mention the identity of the person who invited her. Why would Mr. Fong give her face? Originally, I refused, Fong Yen said. But I thought, what if I get an unexpected reward? Then, you think this trip will be worthwhile? Whether it's worthwhile or not depends on young Master May's sincerity, Fong Yen said with a smile. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. He wanted to smile prettier than Meng Shue. However, his efforts were in vain, no one was looking at him. Those people kept staring at Meng Shue, pointing at him and pressing the shutter button on their phones to take pictures. It was as if Fong Yen was invisible. Am I no longer an idol? A terrifying thought surfaced in Fong Yan's mind. Meng Shue looked around and said, how about we find a quiet place to have a drink? A guest will do as the host pleases, Fong Yen said. Hearing that Meng Shue wanted to talk to Fong Yen in private, Su Boyeth took the initiative to greet them. He said, let's go, everyone. Let's go inside and drink some tea. We still have to cut the cake later. Under Su Boyeth's lead, most of the people gathered in the backyard went back. Although the young women were unwilling, they were too embarrassed to stay there and be lightbulbs, so they reluctantly followed them into the house. Su Qi looked at Fong Yen worriedly and said, Mr. Fong, I'll come find you later. Fong Yen nodded and said with a smile, don't worry, it'll be fine. Meng Shue looked at Su Qi with a smile and said, don't worry. I can't beat him. Uncle, you're so annoying, Su Qi said coquettishly and ran inside with a red face. Meng Shue looked at Su Qi's receding figure and said, don't you feel that these little girls' relationships are meaningless? How do you know? I've experienced too much, Meng Shue said calmly. Chapter 647. I've been through too much, Meng Shue said. His expression was calm, his voice was calm, and he didn't sound like he was showing off. He was just stating a fact that made people want to beat him up. Of course, Fong Yen wouldn't do that. Because what Meng Shue said was exactly what he was thinking. Fong Yen had been through too much. Ever since he experienced Qinitian, Jiang Qin, and Yuan Lin's ferocious, direct, or shy pursuit, Fong Yen had become accustomed to these young girls' love. No matter how hot they were, how could they be hotter than Qinitian? No matter how pure and sour they were, how could they be hotter than Yuan Lin? When Su Qi appeared, Fong Yen first looked on coldly from the sidelines, but then he repeatedly rejected and refused. Being liked by a young girl, wasn't that the charm of a charismatic uncle? It was as natural as an adult needing to eat and a baby needing to drink milk. Mei Yingxue made an inviting gesture, and Fang Yan followed him to the grape trellis in the backyard. There was a stone table under the grape trellis, and there were several stone chairs around the table. Mei Yingxue took out a silk handkerchief from his pocket and carefully wiped the surface of one of the stone chairs. When he was about to sit on it, Fang Yan snatched it from him and said with a smile, "Thank you. Young Master Mei is a very particular person. No wonder there's the word shui in his name. He loves to be clean." Mei Yingxue smiled and didn't care. He walked to the opposite side and wiped another stone chair. After wiping it clean, he lifted the back of his suit and slowly sat down. This way, he wouldn't have his butt press against the suit and wrinkle it. Mei Yingxue waved his hand, and the waiter in black who was standing at the door ran over. "Send a dozen beers over," Mei Yingxue ordered. "Yes, sir," the waiter replied and turned to leave. Mei Yingxue looked at Fang Yan and said, "Today, I want to drink a few bottles with Mr. Fang." Fang Yan looked at Mei Yingxue and said with a smile, "I thought a gentleman like you would like to drink red wine or liquor." "I like the malt aroma of beer," Mei Yingxue said with a smile. "One of my favorite things is to sit under an overpass and drink beer, holding a dozen bottles of beer and sitting by the side of the road, admiring the expressions of every passerby. They were happy, or sad, or tired, or trying to smile. I was glad of their little joys, and sad of their little sorrows. When they were tired, I would feel tired. When they were happy, I would also smile. Every time I see someone, it's like I've lived with them for a second time." Seeing that Fang Yan was staring at him, Mei Yingxue once again showed his signature charming smile and said, "Under the bridge, drinking beer is the most appropriate. White wine is too tragic, like a poor beggar or a loser. The red wine was too exquisite and out of place with its surroundings. I like to be part of life." "You are a philosopher," Fang Yan said. "No, I am a person who enjoys life," Mei Yingxue corrected. "Some people want to live, some want to live, and some want to live. But I am enjoying life. What is the most precious thing to a person? Naturally, it is their unique life. Some people use it to start a business, some use it to kill and burn, some use it to achieve great fame. I use it to enjoy everything that happens to me. When I see you, I also feel happy. Because there's a new person in my life, there's a new set of memories." Fang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled, saying, "I was wrong. You are not a philosopher, you are a literary youth. Success or failure is up to others to judge," Mei Yingxue said with an indifferent expression. "There are always people who call me a monster." "I think so too," Fang Yan said. "There are also people who call me a bitch, but I have never explained anything to them." "That's not objective," Mei Yingxue said. "That's slander." The waiter brought the beer. Fang Yan and Mei Yingxue each grabbed a bottle and opened it. Mei Yingxue raised her glass and said, "A toast to the bitch." "A toast to the monster," Fang Yan said. The two beer bottles collided with each other, producing a clear and melodious sound. Mei Yingxue tilted her head back to drink. Fang Yan also tilted his head back to drink. Mei Yingxue drank elegantly, while Fang Yan drank unrestrainedly. The two of them finished a can of beer in one go, then looked at each other and laughed. Mei Yingxue looked at Fang Yan and said, "There are too many idiots in this world. Don't you think it's boring?" "Idiots don't think they're idiots," Fang Yan said. "We don't think we're idiots either. Are we also idiots?" "I don't know if we're idiots or not, but I will never agree to anyone who wants to take advantage of me. That's why I said you're not an idiot." Mei Yingxue sighed softly and said, "The Mei family did something stupid." "At that time, the Mei family wouldn't think of themselves as idiots," Fang Yan said. "Who wouldn't want to take a bite of such a big piece of meat? If there's someone behind it, I don't think anyone would be able to resist the temptation." Mei Yingxue looked at Fang Yan and said, Chen Shuai is a member of the Mei family. Countless people are envious of other people's glory of starting from scratch, but they don't know that every single person who starts from scratch has the support of capital. Chen Shuai was originally an insignificant labor contractor in Mingzhu City, but my father took a liking to him and invested in him. That's how he got his current position as a real estate tyrant. Fang Yan nodded and said, Chen Shuai jumped out to help Jiang Zhulu overturn the case and wanted to buy a portion of Jiang Zhulu's shares in LoveLore Group. If he didn't have someone powerful backing him, it wouldn't be realistic. The biggest characteristic of people who have been struggling at the bottom for many years is that they know their limits, they know how much they are worth, and they know whether their strength can support their ambitions. Fang Yan opened another can of beer for himself and drank a mouthful. He smiled and said, Watching isn't small, but after knowing who Fang Yan is, there aren't many who have the guts to stand up against me. Old Master Lan transferred his shares to Lan Shan Valley. It's considered another form of compromise. The Lu family won't do it, and Lu Shu is also a beneficiary of the Jiang family's rise in power. The Rin family has some power, but they aren't arrogant enough to jump out and wrestle with the Lan and Lu families that are tied to them. After thinking about it, the Mei family can't run away, the Mei family doesn't show themselves, and the Mei family is also unusually low-key, almost never appearing in public. But, how can there be a wolf that doesn't eat meat? I only found out about this later, Mei Yingxue said. I told Old Master Lan that this matter was too meaningless. Old Master Lan now agrees with my point of view. Fang Yan smiled and said, When you gave Su Qi the gift, you said something. Some things are broken, they can't be put back together again. Mei Yingxue smiled bitterly and said, Although it's the first time we met, your name is like thunder in my ears. Everyone who has interacted with you said that you're not a person who is easy to deal with. Now that you've interacted with me, you know that they're not telling the truth, right? What can I do to make you stop? Mei Yingxue asked in a low voice. Fang Yan stared at him with a burning gaze and said, Make me satisfied. Or rather, make me satisfied. We'll withdraw from the competition with LoveLore Group. Fang Yan sneered and said, If you're not afraid of getting hurt, then you can continue to persist. But, it's best if the Mei family takes action personally. These small fries won't even be enough for Lan Shan Valley to warm up before it's over. And we won't meddle with the Jiang family's affairs anymore. Mei Yingxue said. I've roughly understood the reason why the Jiang family is stepping down. It's because of Qiang Longtan's disappearance. I don't believe that Jiang Zhulu killed his own father. I think there must be some hidden reasons. The Mei family has a good relationship with the government and the media. If we want to create some trouble for you, it should be enough to give you a headache, right? Fang Yan nodded and said, Yes. We do have a headache. Plus, the Mei family's friendship. Mei Yingshue's charming eyes stared at Fang Yan without blinking and said, Is it enough for you to let the Qin father and son go? Fang Yan looked at Mei Yingxue and asked, Do you have any friends? What? Mei Yingxue was stunned. I mean, do you have any good friends who can go through thick and thin with you? Fang Yan asked again. Mei Yingxue thought for a moment and said, No. I do, Fang Yan said. And I have quite a few. Aren't I luckier than others? Luckier than others, Mei Yingxue said enviously. Countless times luckier. I believe in friendship, Fang Yan said. But I don't believe in friendship that has been promised, because friendship cannot be promised. So, you're going to refuse? Mei Yingxue asked with a smile. She played with the beer can in her hand. No, if I refused, after I guessed that it was your treat, I wouldn't have come, Fang Yan said. Mei Yingshue's body leaned back, and after thinking for a while, she sighed softly and said, To be honest, I really don't want you to name your price, because I know that you will definitely cut a vital part. But I also know that I have no choice but to let you name your price. For Grandpa to send me out to do this kind of thing is really boring. So, are you ready? Fong Yan asked. Tell me your price, Mei Xue said. I hope it's within the range that we can accept. Otherwise, the Mei family won't hesitate to go to war with you. This is what my grandpa said, I'm just passing on his words. Fong Yan nodded and said, Grandpa Mei has always been a respected elder. Since he said this, I have to give him face. My price isn't too high. How about half of Tiandu Real Estate's shares? Chapter 648. That's impossible. Mei Xue almost jumped up when she heard Fong Yan's unreasonable demands. Half of Tiandu Group's shares? How could he make such a harsh demand? He even said that Elder Mei was a respected elder and he had to give face to him. If he didn't give face to the elder, was he going to take the entire Tiandu real estate? If that was the case, the Mei family could only fight them to the end. The Mei family had been around for hundreds of years and was the oldest of the 4 big families in Huaqing. They had never been humiliated and extorted like this. Yes, Mei Xue knew very well that Fong Yan was extorting the Mei family now. Fong Yan laughed and looked at Mei Xue. Don't get too worked up. This is a business meeting. If you don't think the conditions are right, you can tell me why. Too high. Mei Xue said. The Mei family owns a part of the Tiandu real estate. But if we take half of it according to your demands, whose Tiandu real estate will belong to? Why does the Mei family want to protect Qin Shuer? They want to protect Tiandu real estate. If the Mei family loses Tiandu real estate to protect Qin Shuer, then what's the point of Qin Shuer's existence? Is it just because he's an obedient idiot? So, Mr. Fong, don't you think you're putting the cart before the horse? Actually, I don't think it's high. Think about it, I have a bunch of brothers over there. They need to eat and drink with me, and Lan Guyu is a big guy and has a big appetite. If we don't ask for more, how can we make him full? Fong Yan looked like he was a big brother who was thinking about his brothers. He lowered his head and thought seriously. If you think it's too much, then we'll ask for 1/3 of the Tiandu shares. This time, it can't be any less. Mei Xue wanted to refuse again, but when she saw Fong Yan's serious expression, she swallowed her words. He drank a mouthful of beer and said, the Mei family did something stupid. We shouldn't snatch food from the tiger's mouth, but we shouldn't pay such a big price for it, right? Of course, Fong Yan said. Of the 1/3 of Tiandu's shares, only a small part is to make up for our physical and mental losses. Most of it is to win our friendship. Mei Xue almost spat out a mouthful of blood. You have just told me that you believe in friendship, but not in committed friendship because friendship cannot be committed. Now you're using this illusory thing as an excuse to take away 1/3 of our Mei family's Tiandu shares? Do you think this is appropriate? If we agree, won't our Mei family become a laughing stock in the eyes of the people of Flower City? Do you have any true friends? Fong Yan asked. No. Mei Xue narrowed her eyes and looked at Fong Yan. You just asked me this question. I know I did. I just want to confirm your answer, Fong Yan said. But I do. I have several good friends who have gone through thick and thin with each other. You can't trust your friendship. Why don't you trust mine? I want 1/3 of Tiandu real estate's shares. Fong Yan said. That's my bottom line. That's impossible. Mei Xue shook her head and refused. The Mei family can't accept it, and I don't want to accept it either. What if I give you another 5% of Longtu Group's shares? Fong Yan said with a smile as he played with the beer can in his hand. Mei Xue widened her eyes and looked at Fong Yan in shock. Then, her expression became more and more relaxed. With a bitter smile, she looked at Fang Yen and said, I really don't understand why the Mei family would want to be enemies with a guy like you. Maybe they think I'm easy to bully because of my gentle appearance. Fang Yen said. Every morning when I look in the mirror, I think I'm easy to bully. You didn't want 1/3 of Tiandu Real Estate's shares. You wanted to tie the Mei family tightly to your ship. Mei Yingxue sighed softly and said, even if the Mei family agreed to your terms under pressure, it also pushed the Mei family to the opposite side. As long as there's a chance in the future, the Mei family won't let your life be too easy. Of course, with the three families working together, the Mei family's life in Huaqing will be more difficult than in the future. However, if you take the initiative to split 5% of Long2 Group's shares, not only will the Mei family not hate you because you want 1/3 of Tiandu Real Estate's shares, but they will also be grateful to you. Everyone knows that a complete Long2 Group that is completely under your control, will bring a lot of influence to the Mei family. The future growth of the real estate shares is far less than the energy shares. There's another good news I can tell you, Fang Yen said. I've discussed it with Chaoge. Some of the Long2 Group's businesses and Chaoyan Technology's businesses overlap or even conflict with each other. Of course, because of some historical factors, both parties were in a competitive relationship at that time, so it's understandable that there are conflicts and contradictions. When I get a complete Long2 Group, I might consider merging Long2 Group into Chaoyan Technology and let it become a subsidiary of Chaoyan Technology that specializes in energy research, while Chaoyan Technology will expand into the field of high-tech products. Mei Yingshue's eyes lit up. She said, at that time, Long2 Group will rise to the sky in a single bound. With the help of Long2 Group, Chaoyan Technology will also become the most powerful high-tech company and energy company in Huaxia. No, its journey will be the whole world, the sea of stars. Now, are you interested? Fang Yen asked with a smile. Mei Yingxue raised the beer can in his hand and said, Mr. Fang, I didn't expect this result. This is much better than I expected. The rumors are true, you're not a person to get along with. However, you're also one of the smartest people in the world. Dealing with smart people has made me a little interested in things like business. In the past, I felt that this kind of scheming for small profits was really boring. Fang Yen raised his beer can and clinked it with him. He said with a smile, maybe it's because you're quite handsome. I don't know why, but I have a strong feeling in my heart that I don't want to hurt you no matter what. Mei Yingxue was surprised and asked in a low voice, You're not, I'm not. Mei Yingxue was obviously relieved and said, I'm not either. Fang Yan threw away the empty can in his hand and said with a smile, the negotiation time is over. I think you need to make a report to Old Man Mei. I'll take my leave first. Tell Old Man Mei that I've always admired him. Shanghai Cobra, one-hit kill, I've heard his story many times. I'll definitely pass on your greetings. Mei Yingxue said with a smile. Fang Yan patted his butt, turned around and walked back into the house. He was a guest invited by Su Qi, so he had to say goodbye to the birthday girl before he left. When Fang Yan entered the house again, everyone's eyes were on him. Now, no one could look down on him or ignore him. As long as they knew Fang Yan and Fang Yan's deeds, they would maintain a sense of respect and fear for him. Mr. Fang, hello, Mr. Fang, my daughter is in the second year of Rosefinch Secondary. Her name is Li Lele. Mr. Fang, if you have time, come to our Triumph Club. Everyone he met would take the initiative to greet Fang Yan, and Fang Yan would smile and nod in greeting. He tried his best not to neglect anyone. The current Fang Yan was no longer the Fang Yan of the past. The current Fang Yan, whether he was willing or not, whether he accepted it or not, he was already in existence that attracted everyone's attention. His every word and action, every move, would attract the gazes and thoughts of countless people. He could make people jump, and he could also make people die with a single word. He knew his own strength, so he was more cautious than before. Spider-Man couldn't do bungee jumping willfully, Superman couldn't casually swing his fist, and the Flash couldn't easily have sex with his girlfriend. Mei Xue followed behind Fang Yan. Although his image was more outstanding, his body was taller, and his smile was more charming, but at this moment, everyone still felt that Fang Yan's existence was more dazzling. Except for those love-struck women. They stared at Mei Xue's pretty face and swallowed their saliva, as if they couldn't wait to pounce on him and lick him a few times. Fang Yan was really worried for Mei Xue, thinking, no wonder he usually didn't dare to go out. If he looked like him, it was even possible that he would be kidnapped and molested by a few female perverts. Su Qi and her parents were standing together, and the three of them were whispering something. Seeing Fang Yan and Mei Xue walking over, Su Boya's gaze had a strong sense of scrutiny. Mei Xinjian's smile was seductive, as if he knew everything like the back of his hand. Fang Yan looked at Su Qi and said with a smile, Su Qi, happy birthday. I'm very happy to be able to attend your birthday party, but I have some matters to attend to, so I have to leave first. Mr. Fang, it's time to cut the cake. Why don't you finish the cake before you leave? Su Qi urged him to stay. Fang Yan smiled and said, I appreciate your kindness, but to be able to see you happy is more important than eating the cake. See you at school. All right. I'll see you off, Su Qi said sadly. Fang Yan looked at Su Boya and said, Mr. Su, thank you for your warm hospitality. Mr. Fang, Su Boya hesitated for a moment, then said, I don't know if it's right to address you like this, but I really admire the profession of teaching, and I also hope that you can become a good teacher. I'll try my best to do that, Fang Yan said with a smile. Mei Xinjian took the initiative to extend her soft and smooth little hand to Fang Yan. Her fingernails were painted with black nail polish, and she looked strangely sexy. Mr. Fang, nice to meet you. We'll meet again, right? Chapter 649. We'll see each other again, won't we? Mei Xinjian's words had a hint of friendliness in them, but Fang Yan didn't find it strange at all. Although it was their first contact and the two of them didn't communicate verbally, Fang Yan could already tell from her gestures that she was an extremely intelligent and opinionated woman. Su Boya was upright and unyielding. He looked more like an academic researcher, like Fang Yan's grandfather, Lu Gong. Fang Yan liked this kind of person, but he didn't think that they could become qualified businessmen. It was also because of such an enchanting and wise woman that Su Boya's career was able to flourish so much. Fang Yan reached out and shook Mei Xinjian's soft and smooth hand. He smiled and said, yes, we will definitely meet again. Fang Yan waved goodbye to everyone. Su Qi glanced at her mother and said, Mom, I'm going to send Mr. Fang off. After saying that, she didn't wait for Mei Xinjian's agreement and ran out with Fang Yan. Sigh, you haven't cut the cake, Su Boya shouted from behind. Mei Xinjian hugged her husband's arm and comforted him, it's okay, there's no rush. We can wait for her to come back, this child, Su Boya said dotingly and helplessly. Mei Xinjian looked at the smiling Mei Xue and asked, it's settled. It's settled. Mei Xue reached out for a glass of golden wine and carefully tasted it. Everyone says that he's a difficult person to get along with, but now it seems. Mei Xinjian carefully observed her brother's facial expression and said, you two fell in love at first sight. The corners of Mei Xue's mouth curled up slightly. When she smiled, there was a charming arc. She said, that's the right word. We fell in love at first sight, he needed my position, and I needed his friendship. We hit it off and had a pleasant conversation. Mei Xinjian's expression became solemn as he said, originally, father wanted me to negotiate with him, but grandfather handed this matter to you. He thought that you and he would have a common language. You have never interacted with him before, so how would grandfather know that you two would have a common language? Although I felt it was strange, since it was my grandfather's suggestion, I naturally had to respect his decision. The May family could take a step back, but they also had to maintain their dignity and interests. So, we have to discuss this matter properly and pay the smallest price to obtain his forgiveness, Mei Yingxue nodded. She looked at her shrewd sister and said, "What price do you think I have to pay to get his forgiveness?" Mei Xinjian reached out and pinched her brother's snow-white cheeks. She said, "My dear brother, don't test me with such an idiotic question. The fact that he came to Chi-Chi's birthday party shows that he is willing to reconcile with the Mei family. As long as the Mei family is willing to give up on their plans for the Longtu group and is willing to compensate them for other things, I think he will not be willing to fight with a low-profile, mysterious, and extremely powerful family like the Mei family. They have just swallowed up the Jiang family, and are now at the heart of the struggle. Countless people are watching and guarding against them. If they dare to start a war with the Mei family again, what will the others think? What will the neutral people think? They are the biggest shark in the sea, so they will eat all of their own. If that is the case, he will force those who are frightened and have no way to protect their property to our side. Fang Yan is a smart person. I think he will not put himself in such a difficult situation. He wants half of Tiandu Real Estate's shares. Mei Yingxue said. How is that possible? Mei Xinjian was shocked. Is he out of his mind? After a pause, Mei Xinjian squinted her eyes and smiled. She said, he doesn't need the shares of Tiandu Real Estate, because Chaoyan Technology, which owns Rubik's Cube, has too many projects to invest in. Moreover, when Lu Chaoge was interviewed by the media, she clearly said that she will not consider entering the real estate field for the time being. Now Fang Yan is taking the initiative to ask us for the shares of Tiandu Real Estate. The economic gains and losses are negligible, but the symbolic meaning is greater. They want to rope in the Mei family and let the Mei family stand on the same side as them. Mei Yingxue looked at her sister Mei Xinjian with admiration and said with a smile, "No wonder father often said that you can raise the flag of the Mei family by yourself." As you guessed, Fang Yan did come with goodwill. He asked for 1/3 of the shares of Tiandu Real Estate, but he is willing to exchange 5% of the shares of the restructured Longtu Group. We all know that the real estate field will decline, but the future of the energy industry is bright. Rather than saying that he is here to denounce us, it is better to say that he is here to give us a ticket to play in the energy industry. So, are you ready to agree? Mei Xinjian looked at her brother who was too good-looking to be a child and asked. Can I refuse? Mei Yingxue said with a bitter smile, even Grandpa can't bear to refuse, right? Yes. Mei Xinjian nodded. Such a good thing is like a pie falling from the sky. What do you think of Fang Yan? He is not a good person, Mei Yingxue said. But he is a character. It seems that you have a high opinion of him. There is no other way, Mei Yingxue said. Who asked us to be partners with him in the future? Mei Xinjian sighed softly and said, back then, the 4 major clans of Huaqing were very famous. You, Jiang Zhulu, Lan Shanggu, and Lu Shu were known as the 4 prodigies of Huaqing. At that time, there was no sign of this Fang Yan. In just a few years, he has become the master of Huaqing. No one in the younger generation can go against him. Even Lu Shu and Lan Shanggu follow his lead. The Lu clan is on the same side as us old clans, and we share benefits. The old man of the Lan clan made a wrong move. Fortunately, Lan Shanggu had foresight and helped the Lan clan in times of crisis. Now, even the Mei clan has been pulled onto their ship by him. In the future, who in Huaqing would dare to go against him? If we can't go against him, then we should avoid him. Mayingxue smiled and said, after this is over, I will go back to study my aunt's moving house. Everything has nothing to do with me. Ingxue, Grandpa has high hopes for you. When will you be interested in studying the ways of making money for the clan? Mayingxue seriously thought about it and said, wait until the day I am interested. Don't force Ingxue. Su Boya persuaded from the side. Being able to do what you like is the happiest thing in your life. Fong Yan walked in front. Su Qi held up her dress and followed behind. Fong Yan's steps were bigger, so Su Qi could only take small steps. Cluck, cluck, cluck. In this quiet and cold villa district, the sound of high heels hitting the limestone floor was crisp and pleasant. Hearing Su Qi's hurried footsteps, Fong Yan stopped and turned around. He said, Su Qi, no need to send me off. Go back. Mr. Fong, I am really sorry about today. Su Qi said with a face full of self-blame, I invited you to my birthday party, but I didn't expect something like this to happen. Fong Yan squinted his eyes and smiled. He said, Su Qi, what does this have to do with you? But Lu Kailuan. Fong Yan smiled. He said, in my eyes, he is just an immature brat. Some young people are jealous of the girl they like and even fight with others. Many people did this when they were young. I have done it too. So, let bygones be bygones. I won't take it to heart. Mr. Fong. Su Qi wanted to say something but stopped. Fong Yan waved his hand and said, go back. Today is your birthday. You must be happy. I will. Su Qi nodded seriously. Fong Yan opened the car door and got in. He started the car and left the villa district. Su Qi stood in the same place for a long time. She sighed deeply in her heart. This man was too far away from her. When Fong Yan arrived at Zhujiang Hospital near the villa, Lu Zhonghang, his wife, and a group of relatives were waiting at the door of the ward. Seeing Fong Yan walking towards the corridor, Lu Zhonghang's expression was a little awkward, but more than that, he was afraid. After he left, someone had already sent him a message to tell him what happened. Most importantly, he had already found out who Fong Yan was through his own channels. Even the Jiang family, one of the four prodigies of watching, was a monster that a small family like him could offend. Fong Yan walked closer step by step. It was already too late to turn around. If he pretended not to see, it would show that he didn't understand etiquette and might offend Fong Yan even more. Lu Zhonghang hesitated. When Fong Yan was about to pass in front of them, he quickly walked over and bowed 90 degrees to Fong Yan. He said respectfully, Mr. Fong, you are the most serious and responsible teacher I have ever seen. Not only do you guide and regulate students' inappropriate behavior in school, but you also fulfill the responsibility of an outstanding teacher outside of school. You manage and teach bad students. I think, if all the teachers in the world were as responsible as you are, what do we parents have to worry about? Fong Yan glanced at Lu Zhonghang and said, I'm not a teacher now. I'm a school security guard. Even the school security guard is so outstanding. Rosefinch Secondary is indeed the most powerful school in Huaqing. When Karen recovers, I will transfer him to Rosefinch. When that time comes, Mr. Fong, help me educate him well. Let him become a humble, polite, and useful young man in society. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.